Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, here in the hall and in Bulgaria, and of course, good afternoon to our dear guests also joining us online in Korea and around the world. My name is Mariana Trifonova, and on behalf of the Economic Policy Institute, I have the pleasure to welcome you to today's event, the 5th anniversary Bulgaria-Korea Policy Forum entitled Cooperation Fit for the Future in times of regional and European and global uncertainty. This is, as I mentioned, the 5th edition of our initiative. And we're very, very happy to be able to celebrate this landmark and milestone achievement with you. Today at the forum, we will start with a few short opening welcome addresses by the people who have made it possible to continue doing this project in the 5 years, and of course with our partners and relevant public stakeholders. First, I have on my right side Mr. Yasin Georgiev, who is the Executive Director of the Economic Policy Institute. Right next to me on the left-hand side, we have Mrs. Cho Ji-ee, who is the Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of the Republic of Korea in Bulgaria, who has been a very instrumental partner of EPI through all these years. Joining us online will be His Excellency Ambassador Petr Krajčev from the Bulgarian Embassy in Seoul. And also Mr. Ubyong-guk, a representative of Korea Foundation, in fact the director of its Berlin office, the organization that has made it possible to sustain this initiative with its very kind financial and organizational support throughout the years. And last but definitely not least, we have the pleasure of being in the company of Mr. Ivan Gojchev, who is the Deputy Mayor of Sofia Municipality, responsible for digitalization, innovation, and economic development. And the reason why we extended this invitation was because recently Sofia completed Memorandum of Understanding to become a sister city with Sejong, the administrative capital of Korea, and if I'm not mistaken, perhaps the first European capital to do so. So we wanted to celebrate that achievement. But now let me start by giving the floor to our Executive Director, Mr. Yasin Georgiev.
So good morning, everyone, and warm welcome to everyone in the room and online. So Councillor Cho, Ambassador Krajčev, Director Wu, Mr. Gojchev, I'm very pleased to open the 5th annual semi-anniversary or fully anniversary event of our bilateral project that started many years ago as a concept, and what started as a very general idea is now a well-established annual project that we at EPI have been putting forward for 5 years in a row, and now it is among our flagship initiatives each year when we gather young people, young scholars working on topics of bilateral interest, and the larger Bulgarian-Korea community to celebrate cooperation, to establish or to further support and nurture bridges between both countries, and to live up to the core mission of the Economic Policy Institute. When I'm saying the core mission of EPI, EPI was established 27 years ago by the late Dr. Ivanka Petkova. And from the very beginning of our activities, supporting young people and supporting scholars was one of the main pillars of activities. And so, true to this mission, we have been developing this platform, this Bulgaria-Korea Policy Forum, and the incubator that is a fundamental part of this as a very important integral part of this cooperation. And each year we select up to 3 fellows who work, who research topics that are of increasingly how to say, not importance is really a very, I should say, weak word, but the topics of of growing significance for both countries, and not only for the countries but also for the European Union. So we did it also this year with 3 amazing fellows who will be presenting their research later on. But before going further on, I would like also to take the time to thank the embassy for being close to us from the very beginning of this project. I would like also to thank to the Korea Foundation for believing in us, because before we started the forum, there was how to say, a very limited cooperation when it comes to events like this or to forums like this, because the majority of efforts have been invested into language training, cultural training, and now thanks to this support we are able also to invest efforts in policy-related research, which is something that we really cherish and would like to continue in the years to come. So without further ado, I would like also to thank to our fellows, because the ladies that we have selected this year are really bright young scholars coming from different universities in Europe, so Bulgarian natives but studying abroad, but at the same time having a vivid interest into bilateral relations. So it will be really great to see how young people think about Bulgaria and Korea, and this will be one of the highlights during the day. So without further ado, I would like to wish to all of us a very fruitful day, and I think after the forum we will be enlightened for further cooperation and for further initiatives that could start out of the forum between both countries, between both nations, because in this time of uncertainty, having reliable partners, even from a geographical distance, is quite essential. And we at TPI think that this is a field with a huge potential, and when it comes to our work as a think tank, as an NGO, we think we can also continue this in the years to come. So once again, special thanks to everyone, and especially to Mariana Trifonova, because when she came back from Korea many years ago, she told me, Yasen, I would like to start something that is related to the bilateral relations between both countries. And I said, okay, Mariana, you know, we are Economic Policy Institute. We are mainly researching economic issues. What can we do with Korea? I mean, at that time I was pretty surprised, but she said, okay, we can do something. And you see, 5 years or 6 years later, it is not only something, it is really one of our flagship events. And I think many of the achievements that we are going to see today are because her personal devotion to topics of bilateral internet. So Mariana is our really very distinguished expert on Asia-related issues and to Korea specifically. And without Mariana, this forum would not have been possible. So all the applause to Mariana.
Thank you very much, Yasin, for the kind words. But of course, this is a joint effort without you believing in the idea, and of course, the whole team. I also would like to mention Ms. Milena Andreeva, who you will see in a bit, who has been also supporting us relentlessly through the very, very early stages of the project. And with joint efforts, we find ourselves here. Now, I would like to pass the floor to Mrs. Choji from the Embassy of the Republic of Korea in Bulgaria.
Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It was an honor to join you today, this meaningful event, Bulgaria-Korea Policy Forum, organized by the Economic Policy Institute. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the EPI for its dedicated effort in hosting this meaningful event. I would also like to extend my appreciation to Korea Foundation for their continued support in fostering dialogue and strengthening ties between Korea and Bulgaria. Their contributions have been instrumental in making this forum and many other initiatives possible. The Embassy of the Republic of Korea in Bulgaria has enjoyed a long partnership with the EPA. Over the years, we have worked together on various initiatives aimed at deepening our bilateral relations. Today's forum is another testament to this collaboration. The world today faces a range of complex interlinked challenges, from shifting geopolitical dynamics to rapid technological advancement. This uncertainty calls for greater collaboration and innovation to ensure more resilient and sustainable future. In this regard, this forum is exceptionally timely and forward-looking. From discussions on security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and Europe to insight into digital regulation and energy translation, this agenda reflects our shared interest. As we celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Bulgaria-Korea Cooperation Fit for the Future project, I believe it is important to reflect on how far we have come and the great potential that lies ahead. Our bilateral cooperation has already yielded significant progress in areas as innovation, trade, and cultural exchanges. Now, with the growing global importance of energy security and green transition, our partnership can further contribute to addressing the pressing need for the future. I'm confident that insight and discussions emerging from this forum will guide us toward new and impactful collaboration. Let us continue to strengthen the bridges of understanding and cooperation between our two countries. Once again, I thank the EPI and all participants for their valuable contribution to this forum. And I wish today's forum great success and look forward to see the successful outcome of our collective effort. Thank you, Благодаря.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cho. Indeed, we really cherish this partnership, and I hope that in the future we'll continue to together strive towards developing the bilateral relationship between Bulgaria and the Republic of Korea. And now I would like to see if we have with us His Excellency Ambassador Petar Krajcev from Seoul. Ambassador Krajcev, pleasure once again to see you on our screens. It was very nice that last year we were able to catch you in person at the last year's edition of the forum right before your departure to Seoul. And in a way, it's a very nice, let's say, moment to see you already there in the capital on the ground so that we could hear how you and the diplomatic mission there see the progress and, of course, the potential of the bilateral relationship being in Seoul at the moment. You have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. At the very outset, I would like to thank the Economic Policy Institute for having me twice over the course of 2 years. I remember quite vividly I was your guest the last time. I think it was last year in the fall, when I was still serving as Director General for Bilateral Relations at the Bulgarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I had no idea that you were going to invite me for a second time, which is quite a blessing, and I thank you very much for that. Now, I have to say that when I spoke at the forum last year, I was speaking in anticipation. Of course, I had my hopes and I had my expectations, but I did not have any practical experience on the ground. And the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, that over the last 9 months, ever since I've been here in Seoul, I can say that the promise is existing, that the potential is enormous. It is up to us to bring it into fruition. But let me not get too much ahead of myself. First, I would like to say that nothing good happens overnight. Now, I'll just give you an example. We had a very significant snowfall here in Seoul over the last couple of days. And even one of the trees in the yard of the embassy fell down under the weight of the heavy snow. And I was thinking this morning that if there is a disaster that should happen, it usually happens instantly. But if there is something good that we would like to bring into the world, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes dedication, it takes a lot of persistence, courage, and generosity. And I say all that as a disclaimer specifically because I would like to say that each and every one of us stands on the shoulders of our predecessors. And I have nothing planned for this particular speech, but specifically because I noticed in the audience we have Ambassador Andonov there. So I would like to thank him and all previous Bulgarian ambassadors to Korea over the last 35 years of diplomatic relations. So I give you a round of applause from across many, many continents and a lot of land. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the promise and the potential, I have to tell you that even only over the course of a single week, we had a trade mission here in Seoul. 10 companies traveled all the way from Bulgaria to present their products. And I have to say that Bulgarian companies in the Republic of Korea are very well accepted. And we are increasing the turnover as well. Now, the Bulgarian exports to Korea for the first quarter of this year, I think we have an increase of approximately 120%, if I'm correct, which is truly impressive. But at the very same time, the most important thing is that we have a convergence of a number of factors, which makes the Republic of Korea and the Republic of Korea and the Republic of Bulgaria inherently close. It's not just the values. Is the genuine appreciation that Koreans feel for Bulgarian culture and vice versa. Now, you know that there is an intergovernmental agreement between the two countries, and the number of people, for example, who like to travel both ways to Korea and to Bulgaria to study in higher educational institutions increases constantly. At the very same time, in terms of trade, investment, and economy, we have to say that we are, as you very well know, in negotiations with Hyundai Engineering and Construction to establish brand new nuclear capabilities in Bulgaria as well. And we are very much hoping that projects such as this one, signature projects, are going to be in the position to open the doors for a lot other small and medium sized enterprises from Korea to step into the Bulgarian and European markets respectively. Now, there is so much to say, but at the very same time, I try to be brief. And being brief means being to the point. Now, I see the distinguished panel, and of course, I have to thank again the Economic Policy Institute and the Executive Director, you yourself, Ms. Trifonova, for being very consistent and dedicated friend of ours over the years. Now, Ms. Jo, thank you very much for all your support and the support of the Korean Embassy in Sofia. We know you quite well. We rely on you, and we are very happy to have you, not just as colleagues and partners, but as friends as well. And last but not least, Deputy Mayor Goichev, congratulations, sir. We followed very closely not just the process of preparation, but your visit to Sejong as well. Now that we have sister cities between the administrative capital of Korea and the capital city of Sofia, now the sky's the limit. You know that the embassy was in the position to provide traditional and genuine Bulgarian rose to Sejong in order for a rose garden to be established in this magnificent and yet very high-tech city as well. So we are very much hoping that we will be in the position to continue to support you in order to achieve new depths in terms of how Bulgaria and Korea become even closer in the months and years to come. Now, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to say that I'm still under a very strong impression of how many new young diplomats and employees of the Bulgarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs speak Korean, which is why I should have probably started with Junun Bulgaria Desailida, but this is basically all I can say, so I'll cut it short. That means that there is a lot of people that are looking towards the Korean Peninsula in order to achieve their professional and personal aspirations. It means that our cultures are not that different. They're compatible. And they draw people even closer together nowadays, considering all the other changes and challenges that we are facing in the global context. Now, my introduction would not have been complete without mentioning how important it is to stay together at this particular point in time because of all the global economic security and other challenges that we have to overcome. Because overcome we must, and we are in the position to do that only if we work together. Now, I'm not going to get into the situation on the Korean Peninsula or the Far East, the Far West, and everything else that is in between. I just conclude with my hope and appreciation of your work to bring the two countries closer together, because it's not the embassy, it's not the Economic Policy Institute, it's not the Sofia municipality or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Each and every one of us has to do their share in order to achieve our aspirations, because I tell you, there is a lot of work to be done, but the potential is here, and it's up to us to make the best of it. I thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'm very much looking forward to next year. So make sure you have a 6th edition of the forum again, and I'll be more than happy to participate. Thank you, and kamsahamnida.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Krajcev. You left us with the burden, the aspiration, and of course we will try to provide and to continue this initiative in one form or the other going forward. I really like the final message of hope and the fact that it's really the people who drive this partnership, because yes, it's the institutions, the organizations, they set the framework, but it's the individual passion and also the drive that each one of us here has in order to really help maintain and further advance the bilateral relationship or put it in the wider scope of the regional or EU-Korea ties as well. Nevertheless, of course, as we mentioned, it's the people who drive the process, but it's the organizations and the institutions who provide us with the frameworks, with the tools to be able to do that. And for this reason, I now turn to Mr. Woo Byung-guk, who is the director of the Berlin office of the Korea Foundation, who has kindly agreed to also join us from his office in Berlin a bit early for him this morning in order to address the audience, because really without the support of the foundation, this would not have been possible. So, Mr. Woo, it's a pleasure to have you with us virtually. You have the floor now.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to speak at this meaningful 5th Bulgaria-Korea Policy Forum and to meet this year's Next Generation Korea Fellows, even via online. First of all, I would like to appreciate Executive Director Yasen Georgiev, Program Director Mariana Trifonova, and the other staffs at EPI for their hard work in organizing this wonderful event. The Korea Foundation has been supporting EPI's Policy Forum and Next Generation Korea Fellows Incubator for the last 5 years since 2000. We think that these programs have been giving invaluable opportunities to young and potential generation to grow more competent and balanced professionals with deep knowledge on Korea-Bulgaria relationship. Moreover, I believe that these activities are worthwhile to prepare for our future together. And I wish that today's event will be another fruitful occasion for all the participants to share knowledge and opinion about Europe and Indo-Pacific region, as well as Korea and Bulgaria. Once again, thank EPI for this wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Woo. As I mentioned, we really appreciate everything that you do for us in terms of support, but also all the other initiatives that the Korean Foundation has been doing in the region and in Bulgaria as well, in other forums and other partnerships. I think we all add up to this process, to this drive of enhancing the bilateral relationship. And now we turn to Deputy Mayor Goichev to see a more practical, let's say, dimension of this bilateral relationship through the two cities of Sofia and Sejong. And Mr. Goichev, it will be a pleasure to hear from you how you see the potential of this relationship.
Hello everyone, and thank you for the invitation. Your Excellency, very kind words from your side. Ms. Councillor Woo and Mr. Councillor Cho and Mr. Woo from Berlin. I'm very happy that I'm invited between you to speak on this event. You mentioned already that Sofia and Sejong cities signed an agreement for sister cities, and this was the culmination of the last 3 years of collaboration between the cities. At first it started when we were included in the International Urban and Regional Cooperation Program of the European Union, and we exchanged several visits from the both cities coming there and here in topics like urban planning, sustainable cities, smart cities, technology exchange, and cultural exchange. And it culminated at the end at us visiting in October, at the 9th of October, the Hangul celebration. And at that day, it was the agreement that we signed together. I was impressed and very honored to be there, so warmly welcomed by the Korean colleagues. And I want to thank also the former Ambassador Lee for his efforts and his team efforts to make this whole agreement happening. Of course, we exchanged the roses. There is a garden in Sejong city center that is with Bulgarian roses. There was exhibitions with the alphabet, Bulgarian alphabet, Korean alphabet. And I want to underline actually the similarities between the alphabets and the creation of these alphabets. They were created in a very important times during the history of both countries. And I want to relate it even now with the geopolitical situation, because the alphabet is not only giving the ability of the people to speak and write in their own language, but also to preserve the culture during the challenges being between the influence of other big nations, right? Bulgaria at that time was under influence of Greek and Byzantium influence. Korea, probably, if I'm not mistaken, was under influence of Chinese and Japanese influence. So having own alphabet created the unity that is needed for the nations to preserve and the sovereignty to continue in ages. And now maybe we're in a similar challenge. So this forum is the perfect topic to exchange further experiences how each of our countries is coping with the problem. So thank you again for being here on this event and wishing you all very fruitful conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goichev. We look forward to good news and further examples of positive cooperation between Sofia, Sejong, and maybe this will, in a way, set the stage for other cities in Bulgaria to reach out to Korean cities and explore the opportunities for urban partnerships. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and we at EPI also are always ready to in a way showcase everything that you've done. As I've mentioned before, in the previous editions of the forum, we've also tracked the progress of this partnership, and we're very, very delighted to see it come to fruition. So thank you, and good luck in your future work. And now I think the moment has come for us to present to you our 3 Next Generation Korea Fellows. The people who actually worked relentlessly in the past few months in order to create their policy papers, and they, I'm sure, are full of excitement and a bit of trepidation to show their work to you. In a way, we will do it in the reverse, meaning that we'll first give them their certificates. The awards ceremony will happen now so that they could benefit from the presence of everyone and enjoy their moment. And then later throughout the day, you will hear from them. So our Executive Director, Yasin Georgiev, I would like to invite you to provide the certificates. First, let me invite also here up front Ms. Kathy Kang, who is a PhD candidate in international relations at Sofia University. She specializes in international negotiations and security dynamics with a focus on the Korean Peninsula. She is very much dedicated to the topic of Korean unification. She is also a lecturer at Plovdiv University, where she has realized a lot of events related to Korean language and culture. And this year, within the framework of our incubator, she was challenged to try a different topic. The topic that she will be presenting is unlocking the potential of the military technical cooperation between South Korea and the countries in Central and Eastern Europe within the NATO context. And her research mentor for this project was Ms. Milena Andreeva. A photo moment, photo opportunity. Thank you. You will hear from Kathy soon enough. The next one is Mrs. Kalina Christova, who holds a bachelor's degree in international and European law and is currently pursuing her LLM in technology law and innovation at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. She just flew in last night to be here with us at the forum. The topic that she will be presenting is Tech Titans and Local Champions and Comparative Study of Digital Platforms Competition in the EU and South Korea, and I had the enormous pleasure of being her mentor. Okay, and of course we also have with us Albena Tsacheva, who is a student majoring in Korean studies in her last year at the Free University of Berlin in Germany, also flew in just last night. She holds a bachelor's degree in law and political studies from the European University Viadrina in Frankfurt, recently completed also an exchange program in EY University. The topic that she'll be presenting today is public diplomacy through non-state actors engaging the diaspora, a comparative study of Bulgaria and South Korea, and her research mentor was our executive director, Yasin Girgilov. Thank you all so much. I think now it's time to maybe move forward with the actual substantial content of our forum today. We will do a very quick technical break to switch things around here, and I would like to invite the speakers from the next panel to join me and my colleagues to assist me with this transition.
Our guests online. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the first panel. After the inspiring speeches at the very beginning of the forum, it's really a pleasure and a great honor to be here today. The first panel is dedicated to a very interesting hot topic, I would like to say. We see that the geopolitical and security realm in Europe and around the world is shifting, and we have dedicated this first panel to this very important new topic of the defense cooperation, the new security and geopolitical realm in Europe and the Indo-Pacific region. I have the great pleasure to have our distinguished guest here, Dr. Elena Atanasova-Cornelis, and I can list her titles continuously. It's like an endless list of titles, but it's not going to be enough to say about her expertise and present her. She is currently a professor in international politics of the Asia Pacific at the University of Antwerp, also the Université Catholique de Leuven in Belgium. She is an associate fellow within the Global Fellowship Initiative at the Geneva Center for Security Studies, Security Policy, and the first Japan chair at the International Center for Defense and Security. She's author of numerous articles, different kind of academic papers, book articles as well, and more and more and more. 2 days ago, I had the pleasure to actually attend a very short lecture that she presented, and I promise you it will really change your perspective about the security realm and the political realm in Europe and abroad. So please, Dr. Cornelis, you have the floor.
Thank you. I usually don't use microphone because you have very strong voice, occupational hazard of teaching for so many years, right? So I prefer not to use it. You need it for, okay, sorry, yeah. So thank you so much, Mila. That was really kind, and I have to live up to the expectations of the audience now following your very kind introduction. I also would like to really express my gratitude to the Korea Foundation for the funding that it has been providing for several years, and for allowing me, a Bulgarian who started actually my journey, so to speak, in the Asia Pacific here in Bulgaria many years ago, studying at the Center for Languages and Cultures, Eastern Languages and Cultures here. And for allowing me actually to collaborate, and thanks very much to the EPI for this invitation. I started collaboration with the Institute already some years ago. I was once presenting online. I also had the pleasure and the honor of mentoring one of the former fellows. And it's a great honor for me. Thank you so much, Mariana, for this invitation, for the keynote presentation. I really, really appreciate it. And as the ambassador, our Bulgarian ambassador, said this morning, well, this afternoon, Korean time, is indeed good things take time in life. It's obviously the case in our private, personal lives, but also certainly even more so in relations between countries. And it requires the effort of many people, of many great individuals from the Institute, Korea Foundation, Korean Embassy, colleagues, and of course the young experts, our next generation. And so I live in Belgium, and I always, of course, tell my students that they are our future, because they will be the future leaders. They will be those who will be bringing Europe closer to Asia, right, and strengthening these relations that we are now. So the groundwork that we are laying, that will be later on reinforced. So it's a fantastic initiative, and many thanks to EPI, to the Korea Foundation, to all the individuals for this project. So as an academic, I have two things that I'm not good at. One is I cannot write speeches, and second, I cannot keep the time. And I admit that always, so please remind me. I also have my phone here, so I tend to speak very long. And concerning speeches, I have a number of notes here. Of course, I was asked to speak about the Indo-Pacific geopolitical context, to present the situation there, also to look at US policy, obviously very important, right? The Trump administration policy on the Indo-Pacific, possibly implications for Europe, with reflections obviously on the Korean Peninsula as well. And so these are a number of issues. So probably in the interest of time, I may focus on a couple of things. And during the Q&A, I'm very happy to respond to any questions or remarks that you have. So maybe the first point will be, of course, the return of the Trump administration, well, is a challenge in many ways to both the Europeans and our Indo-Pacific partners, including Korea, including Japan, including many, many countries in the Asian region. First, where are we going in terms of the evolution of regional order? Maybe that's kind of a background before I dive deeper into the specific dynamics. We are, on the one hand, we may be seeing intensification of this bipolarity. Obviously, if we look at US-China relations, it's nothing new. Relations have moved from the area of more competition into rivalry over the years. We saw that indeed increasing already during the Obama administration, and we saw that obviously Trump 1 continuing under Biden, and more likely to move forward into the Trump 2 administration. A relationship which is increasingly antagonistic, with more differences over more issues and more areas. And increasingly so the areas which used to bring this cooperation between the United States and China in the past, such as climate, the Korean Peninsula, DPRK, for example, these have been increasingly reduced, with more disagreements and more tough, let's say, rhetoric coming from both Beijing and the United States, Washington. So this is this US-China dynamics, which is leading to possible evolution or emergence of two camps in the Indo-Pacific region. Countries lining up behind the United States, US allies, maritime democracies, or of course allies of the United States, whether treaty-based allies such as Korea, Japan, Australia, Philippines increasingly, versus China-led camp, where we have, of course, non-democratic nations, primarily continental, but not all of them, kind of lining up behind China. Of course, this bipolarity is not going to be the Cold War bipolarity, because the increasing interconnectivity, especially economic and trade relations between the two camps, which makes it even more problematic, with more tensions and more unpredictability, how these two camps are going to kind of communicate or operate. Of course, over the years, especially in Belgium where I live and in Brussels, there have been a lot of concern about Russia-China rapprochement, or getting Russia-China very close to each other. That's a concern for Europe. That's certainly a concern in the Indo-Pacific region. So the concern has been growing as Russia and China seem to be dragging in other countries. Think about Iran, DPRK, into this sort of sphere of influence, or that camp that has been growing. And that is leading to a much more clear division between a coalition of democracies, possibly led by the United States, with a big question mark into Trump 2. Values probably will not be that important, but at least at the moment, versus authoritarian Russia-China kind of camp. Then the other question is, perhaps we are going to the direction of multipolarity, right? The global south, unfortunately, many of us academics do not like that term, but we have not been able to come up with something better. So we still continue to refer to the global south, which of course includes many very diverse countries with also diverse interests, obviously. But these are obviously rising countries. What comes to my mind, India is a very critical player, but also many other players. So this discussion of multipolarity means that we are not going to have some sort of two US, China, or maybe two kind of countries sharing power, but also other aspiring powers, which also will lead to much more competition and much more unpredictable structure of relations. So with regard to the United States, of course, have been very important for both us in Europe and Indo-Pacific players, especially US regional allies, as a leader of the liberal international order, which was established after the Cold War years, and United States has provided the global public goods, economic security, promoting shared values, both in the Pacific and Europe. And the United States has played an important role for many, many years in kind of reinforcing these ties between Europe, broadly defined, or the Euro-Atlantic space, and the Indo-Pacific place. And then we are coming, of course, to the Trump 2 administration, where perhaps I would maybe see three alternatives in broadly informed policy, and after that I will focus on the Indo-Pacific. One is, of course, isolationism, right? America first, a little bit being focusing on promoting some grand strategic bargains, maybe with Russia and China. America first does not mean America alone. However, in that isolationism, possibly that may well mean less focus on alliances and partnerships and prioritizing mainly US interest. Option 2, which I believe, at least from what I have heard and read about the Trump administration, is increasingly focus on strategic competition in Asia, primarily target China, and a much more antagonistic relationship, essentially continuing and reinforcing Biden's policies. So focusing on competition in Asia, where the United States will lead and also need partners such as South Korea, such as Japan, in order to pursue that competition with China. This option 2 also means leaving Europe to its own devices, so to speak, which also means much more pressure on the Europeans to provide for their own security. And perhaps option 3, peace through strength foreign policy, where we will certainly see the United States wanting to be this global leader to a certain extent, in which America leads, but still needs its allies. So again, we will see this combination, America first, but also leading. So perhaps maybe a combination of 2 and 3 is at least what I foresee. In other words, focus on competition in Asia, but still the importance of alliances and emphasis on certain level of US leadership, but not based on values or multilateralism. which also means that ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and I have already talked to ASEAN diplomats in Brussels, where there is a serious concern that multilateralism, ASEAN structures, multilateral fora will be set aside, right? The United States under Trump too is going to focus on bilateral partnerships, trying to get certain bargains, economic security area, putting more pressure on allies here and there. Let me move to the specific policy on the Indo-Pacific. I mentioned focus on China. That will be important preoccupation. Possibly, Trump is likely to view the Middle East as maybe integral to the Indo-Pacific due to its trade, of course, and connectivity potential. So we may see strengthening economic and strategic ties between the Middle East and Indo-Pacific. Trade routes, economic opportunities may be brought into that regard. Reinforcing supply chains, connectivity, technology, possibly, and emphasizing cooperation. And here comes India. I believe that India will really be prioritized by the administration in many ways, in addition, of course, to important allies, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and the Philippines as well. Taiwan, maybe just a couple of words. I'm not going to go deeper into that because I would like to give more attention to the Korean Peninsula. But Taiwan, those of you who are following the Indo-Pacific have seen that during the Biden administration, there has been a lot of attention to Taiwan. Biden, even during interviews with journalists several times, has said when they asked him, is the United States going to defend Taiwan? Yes, we will be defending Taiwan. The White House then that backtracked on that, so no, saying the president did not mean that actually, because the United States does not have an obligation to defend Taiwan. There's no defense treaty. With Korea there is, with Japan you have, Philippines, but not with Taiwan. And yet there has been some sort of redefinition of, if I can say, of US-Taiwan policy under Biden, even though the official line of the United States, one China policy, remains in place, not changed. And yet, under Trump, I do think that things are not looking that good to Taiwan in a sense. There might be a concern by the Trump administration or unwillingness to devote too much commitment to Taiwan in order not to get entrapped with too many problems or issues with China. President-elect Trump has said that the Taiwanese is to Taiwan. If you want defense, you have to pay for it. Nothing new. The same has been said to South Korea, Japan. During the first term of Trump, he was saying, why would we, United States, defend prosperous and rich countries such as South Korea and Japan? So if they want, they will pay for it. The same has been mentioned now to Taiwan. And Trump has also said the Taiwanese has stolen our semiconductor industry. So that's another problem for Taiwan, that there will be immense pressure for them. So Trump may be more cautious, certainly unnecessary in a way, avoiding provocation and strategic commitments, and instead directing attention to Beijing and to US-China relations. So let me move on to the Korean Peninsula, South Korea and the DPRK. What does Trump 2 possibly mean for South Korea? Well, we all know war is about tariffs, military cost sharing with strategic allies. South Korea and Japan as well. Some Korea experts have expressed a view that Trump may be calling for a renegotiation of a cost-sharing deal that recently South Korea and the United States signed. I have here the figures that starting in 2026, South Korea is expected to pay $1.1 billion a year for hosting US troops, an increase of 8.3% from the previous year, which possibly Trump is going to pressure even more. The same for Japan. Well, maybe the Japanese may be feeling. Asking for more money, other demands could include more Korean investments in the United States in the strategic sectors, semiconductors, AI, possibly faster adoption of export controls, for example. South Korea also fears US partial withdrawal, possibly from the Korean Peninsula, and US pressure will, in my view, will put kind of, or lead to certain concerns or challenge even South Korea's a very carefully developed balancing strategy between, on the one hand, China, the largest trading partner of South Korea, and on the other hand, the United States, security provider. So South Korea has been trying to really keep the balance between these two powers, and Trump's pressure may be leading, to challenging that approach. Fear of potential US disengagement in the defense area might fuel domestic debates in South Korea on acquisition of nuclear weapons to deter the DPRK more independently. In my view, observing South Korean foreign policy for a number of years already, I think that the idea of developing nuclear arms has become normalized at a stunning speed, actually. Just a few years ago, South Korea acquiring all nuclear weapons was a decisively kind of fringe idea, but now has become more or less a mainstream, I can say, talking point among prominent conservative politicians. If you look public opinion, more than 60% of South Koreans are approving having all nuclear weapons potential. And even President Yoon raised it sometimes, just I think a year and a half ago, a possibility which was shot down by Washington, which of course will not be happy if South Korea moved towards the acquisition of nuclear weapons, let alone Beijing, which obviously will be very concerned about a possible, impact if South Korea acquires nuclear weapons. What would be the implication, in the Indo-Pacific region? What does South Korea want from Trump? Obviously, stronger alliance, commitment to nuclear deterrence, while trying to maintain a cordial relationship with China, which will be a challenge concerning the expectations of Trump's more harsh line approach to China. South Korea will also be very concerned if Trump moved towards Pyongyang, trying to strike a deal there with the DPRK leader. South Korea does not want to be sidelined in any US DPRK rapprochement. What about the DPRK? From South Korea experts in my recent conversations, I have learned that the DPRK probably is hoping to reopen nuclear negotiations with Trump administration, but is not in a hurry. And the DPRK seems to have been acquired. Now, DPRK's position right now is different from when Trump 1 was in office, in the sense that now blossoming partnership with Russia has made sanctions relief, in my view, far less urgent for the DPRK than what was the case when Trump was first time in office. Normalizing relations with the United States, yes, that's something that they would like to achieve, but they would like now kind of Washington to lay down the red carpet for them and come up with a certain deal. So it could be that Trump would be initiating, where North Korea would be deciding whether or not they would accept a meeting. Keep in mind, of course, that previous summits when Trump was in office, North Korea could not get from Trump what it wanted, which was not good for the domestic image of the DPRK leader. So they will be very careful now if Washington is reaching out to them to be sure that they will get something out of that promise. Okay, and just I will move on because I see my time is advancing on a little bit how countries in the Indo-Pacific have been responding, what are we going to see, and maybe a little bit on Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Now, one, I think, common characteristic of strategies in the Indo-Pacific, whether we are speaking about larger, smaller countries, middle powers, bigger powers, US allies or friends only, or partners, is the strategy of diversification. Economic diversification, security diversification, we see that in growing military security cooperation among and between different countries, the growing number of mini-lateral groupings, some of them including the United States. Example in my mind that comes, of course, US, South Korea, Japan, very successful mini-lateral grouping, which has been flourishing since Biden and Yoon, by the way, came into office. President Yoon has been instrumental in improving relations with Japan and working together with the Biden administration to bring Japan into US, South Korea, the Japanese trilateral security cooperation focused on deterrence of the DPRK. This South Korea-Japanese rapprochement, which has happened over the past 2.5 years, was just unthinkable, let's say 5 years ago, when we had Prime Minister Abe Shinzo in Japan, right, Japanese leader. So both President Biden and Yon have played a very, very important role, in my view, for bringing the three countries together and working so well and helping Japan and South Korea improve their political and diplomatic relations. Challenge, obviously, Trump too most likely will not be so much interested obviously in values, but also in these minilateral groupings. This would depend on how much the Trump administration too is going to give attention to the DPRK. Priority will be Ukraine, obviously, Russia, China. Let's see where the DPRK would be placed on the Trump 2 agenda. So this is uncertain. My opinion has always been that Japan and South Korea have to find a way to deal with each other bilaterally. They should not continuously rely on the United States, obviously, for that. But with the currently weak leadership in Japan, unfortunately, a government, a minority government, I'm not sure, whether that will be in the 2.5 years that remaining more or less for the Yoon Suk-yeol administration, whether they will be able, to elevate or to continue deepening their relations. In any case, this strategic diversification means that more and more countries are trying to open the space in the economic, trade, security area for bringing in other partners and cooperating in different areas. And this is where the European Union comes in, I think, in the picture, especially for South Korea, also for Japan, countries which heavily rely on the United States for security. But security is no longer only military security, right? Obviously, South Korea remains focused on hard security issues, on deterrence, defense of the Korean Peninsula, and the US nuclear umbrella is absolutely critical for South Korea and the alliance. But security goes into the areas we're speaking about. Economic security, we have hybrid threats, right? Cyber, supply chain security, and other issues, which have elevated the strategic significance of the European Union as a partner for South Korea, for Japan, and for many other countries. As I have been arguing also in my own work, that geographically distant partners, so South Korea, the European Union, thousands of kilometers between the two of them, but threats are not limited to South Korea or to Bulgaria or to Belgium. These threats, they're crossing continents and regions. And there's so much that the European Union, Korea, and Japan can learn from each other. And this is where I think South Korea very much appreciates these geographically distant partners such as the EU. But concerning the shared threats, this is where South Korea and the European Union really can work together. And just a few words before I conclude. On the 4th of November, this year, so very recently, South Korea and the EU signed the Security and Defense Partnership, essentially upgrading the already very strong in the security area partnership. Because, of course, South Korea has the free trade agreement, has a political partnership, has also security already from a number of years ago, and now it's specifically focused on some important areas, defined areas. What I do find very important about this recent security and defense partnership is that rather than making kind of a shopping list of global problems, there's really this strategic approach towards EU-South Korea relations in terms of designating some specific areas where the EU and South Korea could devote resources and deliver and build a partnership. Which are these areas? I have singled out 3, just for your information. One is cyber. I think that has an enormous potential, and it is prominently mentioned in the Security and Defense Partnership. The EU and South Korea already have a digital partnership agreement and a high-level cyber dialogue. And some EU member states, for example, the Netherlands, Poland, some of you may know that have a strong cybersecurity partnership with South Korea. And South Korea is also part of NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, the first, by the way, Asian country to join. So that's very, very important. Secondly, I think nuclear and weapons of mass destruction proliferation brings a lot of potential to, for example, coordination of counter-proliferation activities between the EU and South Korea, and sharing information could be, I think, bring a lot of opportunities. and development of new technologies, I believe, and weapons system, I think also brings a lot of potential in EU-South Korea relations, which is an opportunity for diversification away for South Korea from dependence on the United States and for European countries from dependence on the United States in the framework, of course, of NATO. And finally, what does Trump mean for the EU's Indo-Pacific engagement, including with partners such as South Korea and Japan? Both an opportunity and challenge. Hard to tell. It could go either way. Opportunity in the sense that in the framework of these hybrid threats, in the framework of US pressure on allies, both here in the Indo-Pacific region, that could galvanize stronger support within the European Union and South Korea for working on shared threats, delivering, and also trying to diversify away from the United States. A challenge, of course, if the European Union or Europe is pressured more to take care of security here in Europe, there will be more resources going on. Of course, Ukraine, stability on the European continent, less resources, also diplomatic attention to the Indo-Pacific region. European Union has had a lot of challenges generally to delivering with regard to the Indo-Pacific strategy. You may know very well there is within the European Union divisions on how to deal with China. Some countries wishing to pressure more China, other countries being much more careful, so China is an important factor in the EU's consideration. And of course, geographically, geography does matter after all. The Indo-Pacific has not been a priority region for the European Union for understandable reasons. In any case, I would like to conclude here that we see that as the security landscape in the Indo-Pacific is undergoing major and rapid changes, the Indo-Pacific is becoming increasingly interconnected in the economic security areas with Europe, and so is Europe with the Indo-Pacific. So I think it's no longer a question whether Europe and Asia should cooperate, but how we should do that, and more a bit of question of we had to do it yesterday rather than wait until tomorrow or in the future. And of course, as often in many of the Brussels discussions that I'm attending, the shared values, the adherence to what that liberal international order has brought, the prosperity, the peace that we have enjoyed both Europe and the Indo-Pacific, this seems to be kind of shared objective for European partners and Indo-Pacific partners. And I think this is really driving this growing attention that the two regions and specific countries, such as, for example, South Korea, but also relations I see with Bulgaria, I was not familiar about Bulgaria-South Korea relations. I'm learning a lot about my own country, building partnership with South Korea. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, but we have to be aware of the significant challenges that are awaiting us, but not despair and act, I think. So I would like to conclude. I'm sorry, I was speaking for too long. Right. So thank you for not interrupting me. Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Cornelis. It's always a pleasure to be in your company and to hear your insights. Very thoughtful. And it's really an honor for us to have such a distinguished expert at this forum. You touched upon numerous topics and really provide us a lot of food for thought. And one thing you mentioned is the changing reality for Bulgaria, for the European Union, for NATO, and its relations with South Korea. Without any doubt, Korea is becoming a leader when it comes to defense cooperation, this arms export. Last year, it was the 10th biggest exporter of arms worldwide. And when it comes to the pace, it's the first. I mean, it's growing so rapidly. What makes the South Korean arms industry that attractive? What drives the European countries, especially those in the South East Europe, to cooperate that intensively with the Korean industry? I'd like to give the floor to Kati to share with us about this topic. And I'd like to give her the floor. She was already introduced already, but yeah, I would like to say that she's a very bright young person, a PhD candidate, already associate professor in Plovdiv University, and we have the pleasure to have her as our fellow. So please, Kati Kang, please provide some information about your very interesting topic.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Also, thank you for the keynote speech. It was very insightful as well. So yeah, today I will present. Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Kathy Kang, and I will present my policy paper, which is titled "Unlocking the Potential of Military Technical Cooperation Between South Korea and the Central and Eastern European Countries Within the NATO Context." Let me see. Okay. Yeah, so now you can see the first slide. Yeah, okay. So let's begin by looking at the current geopolitical situation. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, NATO's eastern flank has become a critical security focus. The ongoing conflict has prompted NATO members, particularly Poland and Romania, to rapidly modernize and strengthen their defense forces in response to the heightened threat from Russia. The NATO accession of Finland and Sweden in 2023, Finland and Sweden in 2024, as a result of heightened security concerns about Russia's invasion in Ukraine, is yet another factor that demonstrates the needs for collective security all the more. Complicating the situation is the Russia-North Korea Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which was solidified in 2023. This agreement includes military and economic cooperation, with North Korea providing Russia with artillery shells and other military equipment to support its war in Ukraine. This partnership extends the influence of authoritarian regimes across different regions and furthermore continues the threat on security in the Euro-Atlantic. Against this backdrop, NATO's military industry capabilities, which are centered around the big four exporters, namely the US, Germany, the UK, and France, faces limitations in production power. NATO's Central and Eastern European countries face immediate threats from Russia and require rapid modernization of their military capabilities. As NATO's Central and Eastern European countries' urgent defense needs are not met or maybe cannot be met yet by the major NATO powers, into this gap steps in South Korea as an economically driven nation that is uniquely positioned to provide timely and effective solutions. For the first time, South Korea finds itself playing a significant role in the European security landscape by offering affordable NATO interoperable weapon systems with fast delivery. South Korea is addressing critical needs that others have overlooked. This not only strengthens NATO's eastern flank, but also marks a pivotal moment in South Korea's defense history, its emergence as a key player in Europe's security architecture. On the other hand, South Korea has emerged as a strategic defense partner for NATO's Central and Eastern European members. And as we will see further on, South Korea's arms exports to these countries are playing a critical role in bolstering NATO's defense capabilities in the face of the Russian aggression. I'll just sip a little bit more. So next we can see some factors which are unique to the Central and Eastern European region. The Central and Eastern European region holds strategic importance within both the NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the European Union. Its membership contributions underscore its important role in regional security and political cohesion. Almost one-third of NATO members are from the Central and East European region, which highlights the region's critical role in NATO's defense architecture, particularly in fortifying the alliance's eastern flank against growing threats, such as Russia's aggression. Similarly, the Central East and East European region is a significant part of the European Union, again with almost 1/3 of the member states originating from this area. These countries are essential in shaping Europe's collective policies on defense, economic resilience, and political integration. This strategic positioning makes the region an important partner for South Korea in advancing military technical cooperation. Now we can move on to some background for lessons from South Korea's defense industry sector. South Korea's defense industry offers valuable lessons for other nations seeking to modernize their military capabilities. Over the decades, South Korea has built a robust and innovative defense sector driven by unique challenges and strategic priorities. South Korea is becoming a global leader in arms export, ranking in the top 10 arms exporters in the world in 2023. The country's defense exports have grown dramatically from $2.35 billion in 2012 to $17.6 billion in 2022. This growth was driven by South Korea's ability to produce high-quality, cost-effective weapon systems at scale. The key categories in South Korea's defense exports include tanks, such as the K2 Black Panther, howitzers, particularly the K9 Thunder, combat aircrafts like the FA-50 jets, and missile systems, including the K239 Chunmoo. This rapid growth has positioned Korea as a vital defense partner for NATO's eastern members. Some key factors for South Korea's military growth can be seen in Korea's history. Since the 1970s, South Korea has faced an imminent threat from North Korea, necessitating a strong and self-reliant defense industry. This continuous security challenge has fueled the development of advanced military technologies and highly capable industrial base. In addition, the U.S.-South Korea alliance also plays a vital role in the American support to Korea. South Korea has embraced the opportunities of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, prioritizing significant investments in R&D, research and development, to develop cutting-edge technologies like advanced missile systems, autonomous drones, and AI-powered defense platforms. These investments have enhanced South Korea's competitiveness globally. Another critical enabler of this success has been the bipartisan support across all South Korean governments in Korea's history. This consistent policy focus ensures long-term stability and growth in defense production, regardless of political shifts. In addition, the creation of the Defense Acquisition Program Administration, or DAPA, has been instrumental in streamlining the procurement process, driving innovation, and coordinating between the government and private defense contractors. DAPA serves as a model of how institutional framework can support defense sector growth. Next on, we can highlight some key moments from South Korea-NATO relations. Along with Australia, Japan, and New Zealand, South Korea is one of NATO's key partners in the Indo-Pacific region. This partnership reflects the importance of the Indo-Pacific for NATO as developments in the region increasingly influenced the Euro-Atlantic security. The relationship between NATO and South Korea began in 2005 with a growing dialogue and cooperation. By 2012, the partnership advanced under the Individual Partnership and Cooperation Program, and most recently, in July 2023, NATO and South Korea signed an updated individually tailored partnership program, which solidifies their collaboration in military and strategic areas. In July 2024, furthermore, a groundbreaking move was done as South Korea became the first Asian country to sign an agreement with NATO on the mutual recognition of military airworthiness certification. This agreement ensures the safety and operational readiness for all air assets used by NATO allies and partners, underscoring the important growing significance of South Korea. Further on, we should also look into NATO's 2% defense expenditure. As a strong partner of NATO, South Korea has been supporting NATO during the Russian war in Ukraine through contributions to NATO's comprehensive assistance package and indirectly through the bilateral military technical cooperation with Poland. Following the 2014 illegal annexation of Crimea by Russia during the 2014 NATO summit, heads of states and government have pledged to allocate at least 2% of their national GDP to defense spending as part of the Defense Investment Pledge. In 2014, 10 years later, all allies are expected to meet or exceed this target, a significant increase from just 3 allies in 2014. Over the past decade, European allies and Canada have increased their collective defense investment from 1.48% of GDP in 2014 to 2.02% in 2024, which is a collective total of over $430 billion US dollars. To ensure these funds are effectively spent, NATO also requires that at least 20% of defense budgets to be allocated to modern capabilities, including investments in research and development, which is R&D. This emphasis on modernization is critical to maintaining the pace of innovation and ensuring NATO's ability to address emerging threats. Let us now turn to Poland, which has become a key military force on NATO's eastern flank. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Poland has rapidly increased its defense spending, projected to reach 4% in comparison to the 2% of its GDP by 2024. Poland has also been a major supporter for Ukraine, providing tanks, artillery, and ammunition, making it a critical partner in the region's security. However, Poland's defense infrastructure still requires modernization to meet the growing challenges from Russia. This is where South Korea's military technical cooperation with Poland comes in. The impact of the South Korea-Poland mega arms deal in 2022, which became the largest in South Korea's history, was signed at a $12.4 billion. This deal is strategically significant for both countries. For Poland, it includes 1,000 K2 Black Panther tanks to replace the Soviet-era equipment, 672 K9 howitzers to enhance artillery capabilities, and 48 Fa-50 combat aircraft to strengthen its air force. For South Korea, this is more than just an arms export. It includes joint production in Poland and technology transfers, which allows Poland to domestically produce and maintain these weapons. This cooperation boosts Poland's defense industry and ensures long-term sustainability in its military capabilities. Like Poland, Romania has been modernizing its defense forces in response to the growing security threats posed by Russia. Romania's proximity to the Black Sea and its shared border with Ukraine makes it a strategically vital NATO ally. In July 2024, Romania signed a $1 billion deal with South Korea for 59 K9 howitzers and 36 K10 ammunition resupply vehicles, significantly enhancing Romania's artillery capabilities. Additionally, Romania became the first NATO country to acquire South Korea air defense systems, the Chiron KPSAM, which improves its short-range air defense. That was in January 2024. Despite these significant advancements and achievements, there are challenges in the military technical cooperation area between South Korea and the NATO Central and East European countries. On one hand, the challenge is related to financial support issues. There are constraints when it comes to unilateral loaning, for example, from the Korean Exim Bank. Despite many banks like Hana Bank, Uri Bank, or Shinhan Bank to have experience in international funding, in the long run, this might become a shortcoming for this sector. On the other hand, another challenge is related to the EU-oriented defense industry. With the new EU Commission mandate starting and the change in governments in NATO's Central and Eastern European states, this might cause uncertainty on previous agreements, as we have seen partially in Poland, so to say. Nevertheless, Poland has demonstrated to have broken the unwritten Europe First principle in military procurement. Poland has shifted the dynamics of European security, bringing South Korea into the mix disrupts of traditional dominance of European arms producers and making Korea a powerful leverage for Poland and its quest to reshape Europe's defense landscape. Some of the lessons learned I've stated here, but maybe in one sentence I can say that Korea is here to stay. So Korea is here to stay in NATO and also in the EU in a more broader spectrum. But as also Dr. Cornelis mentioned, the question is not what, but now it's more all the more how to get from here to a more longer, long-term strategic partnership between South Korea and all the bilateral countries with which South Korea is starting to have those military technical cooperations. And finally, I would like to share some maybe policy recommendations. So the first one would be for South Korea to invest in nurturing local maintenance, repair, and overhaul, MRO, small and medium enterprises, which are a key component for sustainable and mid to long-term cooperation. South Korea has a unique opportunity to leverage its strong industrial base and expertise in advanced technology to become a leader in the global MRO market, which currently is not, it's slightly overseen. By fostering public-private partnerships and investing in MRO development, South Korea can position itself as a key provider of efficient, high-quality maintenance services, meeting both domestic military needs and the demands of international defense markets. Secondly, for NATO, Central and East European countries, another recommendation could be to bridge the gap in mutual understanding and military trust through military exchanges for strengthening partnership, that meaning between South Korea and those countries. So maybe one of my recommendations could be military personnel or even students of Korean Military Academy and the military academies of the Central and East European countries to have such exchanges. And in addition to capitalize on the Korean Army International Defense Exhibition, KADEX, which has more and more growing importance worldwide. Thirdly, for NATO, Central and East European countries, based on the lessons from South Korea, those countries could invest more in defense R&D and initiate joint projects for sharing know-hows by Korea. And last but not least, to enhance sustainable financial frameworks, in order to explore ways for sustainable financial support. For example, using the method of the U.S. Foreign Military Financing, FMF, or a joint funding framework between South Korea's banks and Polish banks, respectively. All in all, I would like to say that this is just the beginning and we have a lot more to see in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kati, for the thorough analysis and also the great policy recommendations. I am sure that the Ministry of Defense here in Bulgaria and also the other partner countries will really go through your recommendations because they're worth it. Thank you once again. I would like to ask the audience here in the room to think about questions because we have time for discussion later on after the third speaker in this panel and also the guests online. Please, you have the floor, the opportunity through Slido to ask questions. So I'd like to invite our third speaker and then I'll give you this opportunity. Now we have Song-hyun Choi online. He's with us from the Central European Institute of Asian Studies, and he's going to present a brand new article related to the value-driven economic and military decision-making. South Korea's arms exports to the EU and NATO. And what I found quite particular in this paper, and would like to hear more about it, is the importance of shared values, the democratic values. Also, Dr. Cornelis mentioned what is important for two countries to cooperate. It comes also not only to different kind of capabilities or different kind of areas of shared interest, but also shared values. So please, Choi, you have the floor.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So I am a research fellow with the Central European Institute of Asian Studies, and I will going to present about the value-driven decision-making in economic and military aspect. So I'll just first share my screen first. Yeah. So yeah. So as I said, this presentation is based on our report on value-driven economic and military decision-making with the lens on South Korea's arms export to the EU and NATO. So since 2022, European defense has seen an increasing demand for arms following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, breaking away from decades of policies of disarmament following the Cold War. And this escalating geopolitical risk have highlighted the urgent need to revamp Europe's defense industrial base to meet the skyrocketing demands for arms. And this also highlighted the aspect of the strategic autonomy, where Europe has to secure its own supply chains in the defense industry and also technology, crucial technology used for defense-related areas. And so this also led to the emphasis on the value-driven decision-making, which means that decision-makers prefer engagement with like-minded states based on the shared ideological and political values in response to the perceived threats from the states with opposing values. And defense acquisition and procurement in particular carry a more significant political implication because the defense itself, or weapons itself, carry a potential threat to another state. And this also means that the ideological alignment also plays a crucial role in how these states perceive these threats and perceive other states as alliance, etc. So the question of strategic autonomy also extends to how European states can diversify their sources of arms purchases. And this is where South Korea comes in as emerging partners for Europe and also in particular Central and Eastern Europe. So as a democratic ally, South Korea is one of the few military technological powerhouse that has been supporting Ukraine and U.S. and EU agenda in this Russian invasion since our first year of outbreak of the war. And European defense supply chain favors increased cooperation with like-minded democracies, including South Korea. And this can be seen from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's database on arms threat delivery, where South Korea was the 10th largest arms exporter between 2019 and 2023, accounting 2% of global weapons exports. This was actually a 12% increase from 2014 to 2023, when it held 1.7% share of the global arms sales. And this rising global demand for arms transfer can be rooted from the increasing tensions in the two regions in the Pacific and Europe. So in the Pacific, China's rise and rapid military expansions in the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea have increased confrontation with the U.S. And there were also ongoing tensions in the Korean Peninsula with North Korea's weapons of mass destruction program, which saw it increasingly advancing its nuclear weapons capabilities. In Europe, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has also led to a paradigm shift among the European states in their defensive policy. So Germany pledged to increase their defense budget up to 2% of their GDP to meet the NATO standard. And also Sweden and Finland break away from their neutrality and and joined NATO in 2024 and 2023. This also increased the importance of economic security and supply chain issues. So the U.S. and China has engaged in trade war, especially in terms of the military capabilities. So China imposed sanctions on the U.S. companies, defense contractors selling weapons to Taiwan, and it also imposed some of the export restrictions on the critical minerals such as gallium and germanium, which could pose some of the supply chain issues to some of the military manufacturers, as these minerals are one of the most critical one of the most critical elements of the weapons production. And the U.S. also banned U.S. companies from investing in new investment in Chinese technologies that has a potential to be used in military capabilities, such as advanced technology like artificial intelligence and hypersonic, quantum computing technologies. And Russia and North Korea's arms deal, exchanging Russia's military technology for North Korea's troops and weapons, has also increased the tensions in both regions in the Pacific and Europe, where not only the Russia's invasion of Ukraine had become a regional dispute in Europe, but also became a trans-regional threat that can be felt in both in the Pacific and Europe. And as a result, securing alternative sources for military trade has become a central agenda to the decision makers in both regions. And this can be seen from arms transfer trend in Europe. So Europe's annual military spending grew by 61% in 2019 to 2023, where up to 77% of Europe's arms imports were from like-minded countries. So, which means that they prefer the democratic values and has a defense alliance with a treaty with the U.S. and also was listed as the unfriendly countries listed on Russia's foreign ministry. And this can be seen from Europe's arms and suppliers' profile. So in 2019 to 2023, 57% of arms imports were from to the EU was from the US, and second place was actually from South Korea with 16%, and this was double that of Germany, which is the largest producer of arms in Europe, which only took 8%. And South Korea has comparative advantages in land-based systems like artillery and armored vehicles, owing to their comparative advantages in heavy industry supply chain. And so, as you can see in this chart, South Korean artillery took 75% of global arms transfer, and South Korean armored vehicle took 33% of shares. So this increasing ties between South Korea and Central and Eastern Europe and European region overall shows that South Korea was able to consolidate its defense ties with Europe based on their democratic values. And this also raises the question whether China, which has a diverging value from South Korea with its authoritarian political system, but also has an overlapping arms export profile with emphasis on the land-based system. Would China can be a potential competitor in the Asia Pacific countries and with South Korea in the European defense arms market? Firstly, I think we should first look at the global ranking of future orders. So while China ranks as the fourth largest arms exporters in the world, it goes down to seventh when we only look at the future orders that are made in 2019 to 2023. And South Korea actually ranks second after the United States in the future orders in this period. And as I mentioned already, South Korea and China has some kind of overlapping weapons category, weapons export category, with particularly export of the artillery, the armored vehicles. So you can see that South Korea has a high share of armored vehicle as well as China, but South Korea has a higher share of artillery, while China has a higher share of aircraft, while the artillery has a relatively lower share compared to South Korea. So there are some kind of overlapping weapons arms export categories between these two countries. In terms of arms orders, South Korea overtook China for the first time in 2019 to 2023. So this shows that while China has been having an edge over South Korea in terms of arms orders between 2004 to 2018, increasing our demands for arms, especially in Europe, which has aligning values, democratic values with South Korea, has reinforced South Korea's exports to the European market, and also Europe's demands to import more of the South Korea and other like-minded countries' weapons. And this can be seen from their recipients. So if you look at the South Korea's recipient profile, you can see that there like majority of South Korea's recipients were from EU and European NATO member states. Well, in contrast, China's arms exports to EU and European NATO members were remaining in zero. So most of them were coming from Asia or other regions, which has a relatively lower profile of aligning values to Europe or South Korea, or more of an authoritarian values can be visible in these areas. And this can be seen from this polity index comparison, which is measuring the democratic values of the countries. So as you can see here, both suppliers and recipients of South Korean arms had relatively higher polity index compared to the ones that you can observe from China. So this is the reason why there's a differing profiles between South Korea and China's performances in their European markets can be traced back to China's ties to Russia. So China's arms export to European states present a stark contrast because of Beijing and Moscow's upgrading their relationship to comprehensive strategic partnership or coordination for new era since 2019. And naturally, China's maintenance of normal trade relations, importing Russian oil and gas, even after the invasion of Ukraine, and continuous export of dual-use goods, have caused some of the anxiety among European countries that engaging in the arms exports with China would not be a suitable for their value-driven decision-making in military and economic aspects. So Europe's side to China shows that most European countries have constructed narratives to consolidate cooperation with the United States against China. And so this divergent values between Europe's emphasis on the liberal democratic agenda and support of the US-led rules-based order versus China's focus on maximizing sovereignty and power while rejecting external interferences have caused Europe to move away from exporting Chinese weapons and prefer South Korea, which aligns much well with European value agendas, and so therefore China only exports its weapon system to Serbia and Russia out of all European countries, which are non-EU and non-NATO member states. So they have purchased Chinese air defense systems and also drones. And so this shows that South Korea can be a compatible partner with the European Union in terms of the value-driven economic and military decision-making. And these are some of the recommendations that we made in our report. So continuous R&D is needed for South Korea to invest in R&D in land warfare systems to maintain its cost and comparative advantages for European suppliers. And also diplomatic flexibility will also be required for South Korea to position itself as a interoperable supplier for the NATO standard weapons. And it will be also crucial for them to improve financing options and closer collaboration with the European buyers to collaborate with policy and commercial banks to provide financial support for the European buyers to be able to facilitate them their weapons purchase of South Korean arms, and also deepen ties with European counterparts through joint ventures and R&D programs. And also, South Korea should also maybe consider narrowing the trade surplus if necessary, as growing South Korean trade would also mean the growing trade deficit for European countries, which means that there can be voices among European countries to reduce those deficits. And so South Korea may also reportedly considering to purchase Polish loitering munition or drones. So that could be some of the options that South Korea can take. And South Korea can also consider diversifying its weapons exports to new sectors, such as naval weapon systems that it has recently did with Peru, as far as I remember, and also maybe some of the advanced technology areas like artificial intelligence or unmanned platforms. So yeah, that will be the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for providing a different perspective over the defense cooperation. I'd like to ask you where you're joining us from, which country, because the Central European Institute has offices in different locations in Europe.
Oh, I'm joining from Hong Kong, which is where my full-time job is located. Yeah.
Okay. So I suppose it's quite late for you. Thank you for staying with us. I'd like to invite you to stay a few minutes more with us for the discussion. Thank you once again. If the audience would like to read the paper, you could go through the website of the Central European Institute of Asian Studies. So now you have the floor, dear guests. Do you have any questions? And also the ones who are joining us online, you can write through Slido your questions, and I'll read it here. So this is the link, the hashtag. Okay, so meanwhile we have about 10 to 15 minutes for discussion. Maybe while you think about some interesting questions to our panelists, I would like to ask a question, if you allow me. I remember 5 years ago when I actually did a very thorough research, a policy paper about the bilateral Bulgarian-South Korean relations in terms of defense and security. It was a completely different picture. It's really like nothing in comparison with today. We see this changing and stronger and stronger cooperation in terms of especially defense, arms control, and so on and so forth. And by that time, we're thinking and talking about private military companies. We were in one way or another using this kind of, if I may put, outsourcing of security. And now we see that the countries in NATO, they're more and more trying to purchase their own arms and self-production of arms. So I was just thinking, what is your perspective of this? Are we going to continue with strengthening cooperation within NATO and using these shared capabilities, or we are going to more and more try to have this self-reliance, as you said, like from the point of view of Korea and Japan, the self-reliance of having our own arms?
Yeah. Oh,
please first, yeah. And then, yeah.
So I think what we are seeing is the diversification trend that I mentioned that had started way before Ukraine war. And in particular, of course, I'm not a NATO expert, so I can speak more about the Indo-Pacific countries and their thinking. And of course, having alliance with the United States has been a central pillar for both South Korea, Japan, and other countries in the Indo-Pacific region for many decades. But of course, the Trump administration, Trump 1, was in a way a wake-up call to these two countries and to other players in a sense of dealing what we call in international relations the alliance dilemma. When you're a smaller country dependent on a larger or big power, you're facing the dilemma of abandonment and entrapment. If you are, getting too close to your ally, you do whatever it takes just to keep them engaged in your security. What is the risk for South Korea? You get entrapped in a possible conflict, which you otherwise wish to avoid, conflict led by the United States. On the other hand, if you're moving towards the opposite side and you want more self-reliance, relying on yourself and kind of distancing from your ally, you risk the possible abandonment. In other words, the United States will not be there for you, South Korea, right, in case of confrontation with the DPRK or other potential security issues in Northeast Asia. So for these smaller players, or what we call them the client states of the United States, Japanese, South Korea as well, there, Philippines, that has been a careful balancing between abandonment and entrapment. And depending on, of course, of the US administration over the years, that has been kind of shifting like a pendulum from one to the other side. The Trump administration certainly increased very much South Korean concerns about abandonment. And what we see, I can say, unprecedented strengthening of South Korean relations, both with the EU and NATO, especially over the past few years, ranging from South Korean president attending summits with the other Indo-Pacific 4, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, signing the individual tailored partnership agreement, and all the agreements that the two colleagues on the panel excellently discussed and outlined. So thank you very much for going into these very important issues. So all that attests to indeed the growing concern about abandonment that we see in South Korea and Japan as well. In other words, while the alliance with the United States, in my view, at least for the foreseeable future, will remain for South Korea the number one pillar in terms of defense and especially the US nuclear umbrella, South Korea does not want to be locked into that, bilateral partnership, and is expanding its strategic options. Relations with NATO, what colleagues discussed in the panel, are, I think, an example of that strategic diversification. For sure, South Korea does not expect neither Japan from NATO to come to the defense of South Korea, absolutely not, let alone the European Union. But nevertheless, in the critical sectors, defense technology, research and development, and all the other issues that you pointed out, both the other colleagues, speakers, South Korea wants to reduce reliance. And this was also an excellent, I think, examples that Mr. Choi was presenting all the statistics, how we see over these recent years happening. So to conclude, in the foreseeable future, the United States has to be there for South Korea. Absolutely important for defense and deterrence, especially dealing with North Korean threat. But the diversification away from South Korean perspective should continue. That would very much depend on the situation here in Europe, resources, Ukraine war, political leadership, NATO governments, Central and Eastern European countries, whether they would reciprocate to South Korean demands. In my view, on the part of South Korea, that's a trend that will continue. Whether or not from this side will continue, that's an open question.
Yes, I had some thoughts as well. So one of my rhetoric questions would be was this even planned? South Korea, Poland, we never knew such a thing could even happen. So in this case, we can see that actually Poland approached South Korea first. And I think this is one of many more to come in this sense that Korea has a history of sharing know-hows and experience, being from a country that was receiving help, international help, international aid, to becoming a donor country. And currently, Korea is also, I think it's from 2022, I think, is now in the list of countries of OECD which are developed countries. So I think Korea has a lot to give as experience and know-how to European countries. But at the same time, I also agree with Dr. Cornelis about the need for the diversification of allies as well. But at the same time, I don't think, like, my question would be, should Korea be picky about this or accept everyone? I think that's also another point that could be thought about. Yeah, but yeah, I think self-reliance overall is like a current trend. Like, as we know, in Europe, nationalism is becoming more and more seen in different countries, and also the far-right movements. And I think also in Romania, the first round of presidential election rounds, I think the far-right candidates, he also had like shocking win. So I guess like there is this overall European atmosphere where there is a lot of trend in nationalism, and then at the same time, are these countries who are choosing to become more like, who are becoming more nationalistic, willing to accept like help from like non-European states, which have, like, as also the panel discussant Mr. Choi also mentioned, like being not having the same values, like not driven by the same values. Yeah, I think that would be some food for thought, I guess, in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, this is becoming quite important. Okay, we have questions. Will you allow me just to provide to Mr. Choi the opportunity if he would like to share some thoughts on this question, or we can continue with the questions here. Mr. Choi?
Yeah, sure. About the diversification, I think that I think this, as Kathy mentioned, the Poland case can really be one of the emphasis of these kind of diversification issues. So when we look at South Korea's export to the EU markets, Poland is actually taking 96% of total South Korea's arms export to European market, and this also can be seen as a kind of unsustainable for South Korea. But if we look at South Korea's capabilities of the technologies in artillery and armored vehicles, it's actually doing way better than the global average technology. And what this means is that not only that Poland is attempting to increase their self-defense capabilities, but also they are attempting to. But also South Korea can expect more opportunities from its through its comparative advantages of in these land-based systems. And there could be more additional orders from Poland or other European countries owing to its better comparative advantages in these areas. And also Poland has been also importing some of the U.S. weapon systems, but they were mostly on the advanced weapons systems like aircraft and unmanned platforms like drones. And so it has been kind of diversifying their land-based weapon system. So this means that while U.S. is still a huge stakeholder in Poland's weapons categories, South Korea is slowly increasing its foothold as one of the land-based system stakeholders in the European market, and therefore there can be more opportunities for South Korea to expect in the future.
Thank you very much. So now I would like to give the floor to...
I would like to ask a question to Kathy Gang. So
May you please present yourself first?
I'm Lee from the Korean Embassy, and I have a question to the Kathy Gang, if it's possible. Thank you for your insightful presentation between the NATO and Central Eastern European military and technical cooperation. But as we understand that you're based in Bulgaria, that you are a PhD candidate at Sofia University, also the professor to Plovdiv University. So can you share more your opinion about the Korean, Bulgarian, any military technical cooperation in the future, and any policy recommendation to Bulgarian and Korean relations?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the valuable, important question. Yeah, I actually was thinking a lot of how this can also be applied to Bulgaria. One of the things that I would like to include in my policy paper would be maybe this is more like people-to-people exchange, because South Korea in Bulgaria is seen as more like like the K-pop, K-drama, Hallyu, like side of Korea is more seen, more visible currently. But also, I guess that there has to be more visibility on the K, in Korean it's called K-방산, so the K defense industry as well. So I think first of all, the most important thing is to have visibility, and in that scenario, I think maybe exchange, as I mentioned, between military personnel or even students from like the Bulgarian military academy and students from the Korean military academy, I think would be a very nice first step for people to get to know each other and to see like what are the pros and cons in the countries, like between the countries. And I think the second one is also something that is going on. So I think it was last year or this year in spring. I think there was a Korean exhibition on a Korean arms exhibition, the KADEX, also in Bulgaria. So for me personally, I think that this is also a nice, like a very secure second step into furthering on this visibility of South Korea's defense industry in Bulgaria. Yeah, so for me, I think those are the two steps that might be undertaken. Thank you.
Yeah, the HIMOS exhibition as well. We have one more question and two questions in Slido as well. So,
sure.
Please.
And also, may I introduce myself, Paul Kovachev. So I support, so Katie opinion about, so human exchange. Why? Because, so we have to find some standards for some Bulgarians, let's say, so sent to South Korea, like managers to see exactly step by step what's happened in the military industry. Why? Because here in Bulgaria there are a couple excellent factories, military factories, which produce excellent, so military units. So I think, so Bulgaria should be perfect place, so for rehabilitation or for some fixation of all of these military units that South Korea also provide to Poland or to Romania. But again, so Katie is right. We have to exchange some people, so going to South Korea, see exactly from A to Z the procedures, or at this time, also some Korean, so specialist professionals coming to see, okay, these and these in these factories, also working perfectly for us, and this is excellent area. So to exchange. This is not only area, okay, we grab aircrafts or we grab, let's say, military units. No, this is sort of franchising, I thinking. And excellent, so area for Bulgaria, like state, so to start and improve, so these procedures with South Koreans. What do you think, Katie? What do you think, so the Professor Cornelis about my opinion? Why? And I finish this. I think in Trump administration, the priority in the next years should be Taiwan. Why? Because Taiwan, this is also the main producer of semiconductors. And South Korea should be the excellent partner of USA. And the more and more important rule of South Korea, according to U.S. foreign, so policy, should be increased in the next, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years. And this is perfect, so niche, the perfect area for Bulgarians to support South Korea, to support USA, to support Trump and policy. What do you think about this stuff? Thank you so much again.
I would like to brief response on my part. What you're mentioning essentially is in the framework of connectivity, people-to-people links. And connectivity nowadays, of course, means many things. Digital, economic, and that is people-to-people links. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. That's a priority for the European Union.
Training the people to know the procedures, to know the quality, the standards. So I'm thinking this is the base to start from somewhere.
I just cannot say that I couldn't agree more than what you're saying. And that's part of the EU's engagement in the Indo-Pacific in the framework of connectivity, which, of course, we have the economic digital infrastructure, and that is the people-to-people, which is very, very important emphasis, especially, of course, in relations with Korea, with South Korea, with Japan, and with other like-minded, right? The values point that we brought in the previous panel that is very much here.
Look what's happened with BRICS. So those guys, they working, and how to say, those guys are working in progress, by the way. Cannot take. Yes, Katie.
I agree as well.
Okay, because we are running a little bit behind of time, so I think 5 more minutes for this discussion. We have 2 questions online in Slido. The first one is how can the Bulgarian military industry and the South Korean one collaborate together? And
It's so clear.
yeah. And the second question, are there any other military deals between the Central European countries and the Republic of Korea that are in progress? Is Bulgaria about to sign similar deal? Oh, and we have one more new question that came up. What is NATO's strategy to follow more diplomatic solutions than playing the I own the bigger guns game? Okay, thank you for the questions. About the first one, how can the Bulgarian and the South Korean military industry collaborate together, and the military upcoming deals of different countries? Maybe to Kathy, if Mr. Choi wants to take the opportunity to answer as well, please just give me a sign.
Yeah, so the question is, are there any other military deals between South Korea and the Central and East European countries currently or undergoing? So as far as I'm concerned, I think there were some with Slovakia, but I am not really sure how, in detail, how they are going. I know that there were talks, but I'm not, 100% sure if they were gone through, like the deals with Poland and Romania. Another ones that are undergoing, as far as I know, are between South Korea and Estonia, and South Korea and Finland.
And Norway.
And Norway, yes, thank you. Yeah, it's Norway as well. But for Bulgaria, I do not know. Yes, so that would be my answer. Yeah.
I can just, because this is not my area of expertise, but I have been affiliated with Estonian think tank Center for Defense Security. I was Japan chair last year. Now I'm non-resident research fellow, and there's a growing interest in the Nordic Baltic region into cooperation with South Korea for obvious reasons, because they are on the eastern flank and they're directly exposed to the Ukraine war. Even with based on my conversations with Estonian colleagues, officials, there is a strong perception that in Brussels there tends to be somewhat passivity with regard to the EU's overall engagement with South Korea and other like-minded partners. And there seems to be a perception that the European Union is being split now due to the Ukraine war on countries that are obviously much more concerned about how the conflict, if it will be ending, and what the opportunities are for potential engagement with Indo-Pacific partners, which seems to be, according to Estonian experts, not shared back in Brussels by the leadership or maybe other officials. So generally on that part of Europe, there's a strong interest and a lot of potential, and I think you could see reciprocity on the part of South Korea being interested, and from there you having the similar signals, right? But beyond that, about Southern Eastern Europe, I also do not know. I know about Poland because I also work with Polish colleagues, And it was interesting to see in the presentation of Mr. Choi, indeed, the growing significance of Poland in engagement with South Korea in the defense sector. Perhaps Poland maybe will be able to galvanize also some sort of more stronger action by other European countries. I'm not sure about that. Obviously, political leadership, as Kathy was pointing out, the rise of nationalism, that plays a very, very important role, where the EU as a whole will be continuing to engage in. But indeed, the Baltic-Nordic region is absolutely critical in that regard.
Yeah, before we were concerned about the interoperability and different kind of security concerns of this defense cooperation, but nowadays we see that more and more South Korea is really getting deep into this cooperation. I think.
One more question.
One more question, last one.
Yeah, last one.
Please.
I wanted to ask about for a clarification on the policy recommendation for the exchange, military exchange. Yes, this is wonderful, but are there any current exchange programs, policies, or like practices from the South Korean government for exchange with other countries?
Thank you for the important question. On this part, maybe I will be able to answer in my policy paper. Yeah, but I think it's very important, so I will make sure to add it on.
Thank you so much.
Yes, please, after the policy papers are published, please go through them at the website of the Institute. So maybe we could close up this quite interesting discussion. I know we can continue forever, but we have other interesting topics coming up. So now we have 15 minutes coffee break. So please, you have the coffee break outside ready for you. Take your time, and we'll be waiting for you back at 12. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, Kathy. That's a fascinating work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed the first portion of this event. I think we had a very, very interesting in-depth discussion on the military cooperation potential between South Korea and the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, and of course Bulgaria as well. And now we move to the digital domain. If I can make a connection between the two topics, I think it was Professor Cornelis who mentioned that despite the geographical distance between Europe and South Korea, and respectively between Bulgaria and Central and Eastern Europe and South Korea, the issues that we face are so common and so important that this distance is in a way eradicated. And we now see more and more opportunities for cooperation. If we have to transfer this to the digital domain, I think here we already have all borders basically erased by the virtue of the concept of digitalization. So we will focus our attention in the next maybe half an hour on the topic of cooperation on global digital and tech regulation, an area that the European Union is also very active. And we will see how the EU and the South Korea approach this topic and try to find the balance between what we know to be the data protection issue and also the competition, the competitiveness, the innovation potential. I think all legislators in this digital domain have struggled in trying to really fine-tune their legislative practice in order to achieve this balance. And through the panel, we want to explore the challenges but also opportunities related to this topic. I have with me on my left side Kalina Hristova, who already saw early in the morning our 2024 Next Generation Korea Fellow, who will be presenting on the topic of tech titans and local champions, a comparative study of digital platforms competition in the EU and South Korea. And then I'm also extremely pleased to see on my right side Anita Dangova, who is also a very treasured alumna of our Next Generation Korea Fellows incubator back in 2021. She started with a paper first on CBAM and on EU Green Deal and how it affects South Korea. Then we transitioned into more strategic issues related to how the EU and South Korea cooperate on the topic of strategic autonomy. And more recently, last year, I think she completed a discussion paper on AI regulation, the EU and the South Korean approach. So now we continue this digital trend, and she comes here also in her emploi as an associate at DGKV, which is a very reputable legal company in Bulgaria specializing in corporate law, data privacy, and AI law. So the perfect also professional now to comment on the topic that we have selected for this panel. But now I, without further ado, give the floor to Kalina to present her paper, and I would just ask the colleagues to show the presentation on the screen as well. Yeah, I think we can start now. Sorry, that was me.
So hello everyone. As you heard already, my name is Kalina. I'm currently pursuing my LLM in Technology, Law and Innovation in Groningen, the Netherlands. And my tie to Korea was really strengthened last year during my exchange semester at SNU's Faculty of Law, where I kind of further developed my passion for competition law and digital markets, for intellectual property and AI regulation, and thus explains why I selected particularly this topic of discussion of my policy paper, just because I do see the intrinsic ties that the EU has with South Korea and how the two regions can mutually benefit when it comes to this domain. Let me just check. Okay, so firstly, when you hear competition, I assume you would expect something on a more corporate level, meaning competition just between the companies that doesn't necessarily include the consumers as stakeholders. However, in order to show you that you, in fact, as consumers of digital platforms are, in fact, part of the conversation, I would just ask you to kind of reflect and think about how many times today you open the digital platform. It could be a search engine, Google, for example, maybe you scroll through the news, maybe you texted someone through Messenger or Instagram. So potentially you maybe have opened 2, 3, 5, 10, which shows one of the key characteristics of such markets. That is the multi-homing, meaning that you probably have more than a few apps that are digital platform apps on your phone. So essentially, in order to introduce my policy paper, here is kind of a brief summary of how I looked at the topic. So essentially, the purpose of the study was to conduct a comparative analysis between the digital platform markets in South Korea on one hand, and then on the EU, and what different approaches they undertake when it comes to their regulation. And my focus was essentially to find balance between, on one hand, the rights and interests of consumers or users, and then on the other hand, the other stakeholders, the geopolitical actors, as well as the platforms themselves. So in order to do that, my scope were essentially 4 case studies of the 2 most dominant companies in the 2 regions. Within the EU, these would be Google or Alphabet and Meta, and interestingly in South Korea, they've kind of managed to nurture their own homegrown digital platform dominant companies, which are Kakao and Naver. So before I continue, I would first like you to show this quote of probably one of my favorite professors from my university, Peter van der Wettert, who recently defended his PhD defense, and it started with this quote that I personally found very intriguing, and that is that essentially 0 and 1 are the most important numbers since pi. Essentially what this alludes to is the fact that in the current digital economy, data is our new currency, and this is what drives such markets. As already mentioned, digital platform markets have specific characteristics that really distinguish them from any other market, which makes them so difficult to regulate. And here are the top 5 such characteristics as defined within academia. First, we start, as I said, with the fact that they are data-driven. As I said, data is the currency. Currently in the digital economy, you're not paying with money for what you think are free services. You're paying with your time and with your personal data. And that's what you're giving to companies such as Meta, Alphabet, or Kakao and Naver as a if you're using them. Secondly, we have network effects, which means that the value that these companies have essentially is dependent on how many people are on the platform. So the more of your friends are on a platform, the more likely you're also to start using it, which is essentially what drives traffic, meaning that they can collect more data and essentially conduct what is usually called data pooling, so that you have more targeted advertising, connecting essentially two sides of the market, which is one of the other characteristics, the fact that they're multi-sided, so they act as intermediaries. On one hand, you have us as the consumers, as the occasional scrollers on Instagram or chatters on KakaoTalk. And then on the other, you have businesses that want to provide you with a service, want to sell you a product, and the best way in which they can do that is if they can target their audience well, and the best way to do it is to use the services of Meta, for example, that provide them with all the data points that they might need. A fourth characteristic are the low marginal costs, meaning that it's really cheap to start such a company or to attempt to enter the market. Essentially, you program it, and then you put it on the App Store or on, the Samsung App Store or whatever your device is on, and you're already there, or you might think that you're already on the market. And finally, that is the global reach, meaning that all of these platforms, they operate cross borders, making regulation really difficult, especially when you consider the fact that, as already we saw in the first panel, there are very different values in different parts of the world that it's really difficult for regulatory authorities in different regions to balance. So this is where we kind of go more deeper into what my policy paper discusses. And these are firstly the different regulatory landscapes when it comes to competition law. So on one hand, we have the EU's approach. Basically what we have here is the DMA, the Digital Markets Act, that was very recently adopted, where we take this what legal scholars call an ex-ante approach. So you regulate before something happens. And in order to do this, basically what the European Commission did was to designate a few very big companies on the digital platform market in the EU, depending on the market share that they have, on the user base that they have, on the profits that they have within the EU. So far we have 6, there were supposed to be 7. Booking.com was supposed to be the 7th one. However, they're still not recognized yet as a gatekeeper on their relevant market. The other 6 include two of today's case studies, Meta and Alphabet, as well as Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. I think I'm forgetting the 6th one, but they're not part of the study, so it's not important for today. So essentially here we have a focus on consumer interests and competition fairness. Basically what the EU wants is for us to have as much choice as possible, 100 of platforms if possible. If it's possible to have a platform for each and every user, this would probably be the best in their view. However, this leads to some criticism, particularly in regards to over-regulation that essentially impacts service quality. So instead of benefiting the consumers, maybe there are more negative effects when we're trying to provide them with so much choice to an extent where this negatively impacts the service quality that they receive from these digital platforms. In South Korea, the approach is quite different. And that is mainly because of the different market structure there. There we have also regional, national companies, which you don't have here in the EU, which I'll discuss in a second. So there they did try to adopt essentially an identical instrument to what we have in the EU, that they call, by jargon, the Kakao Act, because Naver and Kakao are the 2 biggest digital platforms. And for a plethora of reasons, a variety of reasons that we'll discuss in a bit, you'll see why it essentially failed to pass through the adoption stage in the country. So there we have an emphasis on supporting domestic players, already mentioned Naver and Kakao. However, the concerns raised by both the domestic stakeholders and the international such are first the potential protectionism that some geopolitical actors see us potentially occurring. And secondly, enforcement challenges against foreign companies that do not have presence in the country. For example, with the recent deepfake pandemic in the country, that was occurring on Telegram. As Telegram doesn't have regional presence in South Korea, essentially no enforcement measures can be taken in order to remove the content. Yeah, so as I already mentioned, there is kind of a different market structure when it comes to digital platforms when we are comparing the EU and South Korea. EU is dominated, more so even monopolized with, this was the important sixth actor, TikTok. It is actually important. ByteDancer, the sixth gatekeeper designated by the DMA. So here, except the Chinese giant that only recently penetrated the EU market, only a few years ago. Other than that, we're essentially monopolized by US companies. Meta, which includes Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger. This is what we have here. We don't have a local competitor that can effectively compete with these US companies. However, the image is starkly different in South Korea, where actually the top digital platforms are homegrown, very much integrated as well. So this is why, as we can see on the #1 spot, we actually have Naver instead of YouTube, which is also part of the big Alphabet umbrella. So YouTube and Google, they go together. Naver dominates in South Korea, which is a particularly intriguing case considering the global reach of Meta and Google, considering the amount of data that they have about their users. It's really interesting to see how, not only that they're dominating in South Korea, but also how loved they are by the Korean society. As I already said, there are very important geopolitical influences when it comes to adoption, unfortunately, of regulation of such big platforms, and that is particularly in relation to the Nikao Act that I already mentioned. So starting with China, although TikTok is one of the most wide-used platforms in the EU, this is not the case in South Korea. They have very limited penetration on the market, which essentially meant that if the Nikao Act was to be adopted, TikTok wouldn't be covered by it. Essentially, the whole idea of legal instruments like that is that prior to their adoption or their application, you already know whether they'll apply to your company or not. And TikTok knew that this wouldn't apply to them. Meta and Google also knew that this won't apply to TikTok, which is why the United States very strongly opposed the opposition of this act, which is actually one of the key findings of this paper. It was how important the US are as a geopolitical actor when it comes to competition policies outside of their own country. Not only did they strongly oppose the adoption of the act, but firstly, they threatened with sanctions South Korea in case they adopt the act. And secondly, they very strongly critiqued the approach that the EU takes, more about which you can read in my policy paper. And thirdly, they even raised concerns about discriminatory effects, essentially saying that if the Nikao Act is adopted, US companies will be unfairly discriminated against, not by the South Korean companies, but by the potential that this act would open for China to become as a dominant player on the South Korean market. And finally, very importantly, we have Japan, who are very successful in balancing their local champion support with the so-called Brussels effect, or the regulation that comes from the EU, such as the DMA. They did adopt a similar act and even established an authority that will overlook its application. So they essentially balanced the interests of the EU, the interests of the local stakeholders, and the competition that comes from US and China, which was really interesting. Another point that is critical to my policy paper are the cultural dynamics and how essentially culture, different philosophical influences can affect the user experience at what consumers want to see on the market. So in the EU, very much individualistic when it comes to just purely philosophical view, where usually consumers want more choice. We want to have a few platforms that we can kind of go around for. We want to be able to compare and contrast. If we don't like one thing, then we jump to the second. We are really easy to critique, to cancel even if you want to use that word. Whereas South Korea as a collectivist society, they are far more interested in having an integrated user experience. So having one app that has every service they might potentially need within this one application, being able to have a payment service through which, or an app through which you can buy your groceries and clothes and chat with your friends and share photos. There, this is preferred, even if this comes at the expense of having less choice. So in situations where, let's say, the servers fall down, which has already happened to Naver, they're far less interested in having a different option. Rather, they would wait for the services to be back, which also raises very much interesting questions as to their approach to regulation. And here we come to my policy recommendation. So how the two regions can, in fact, enhance their competition. As we can see on one hand, the EU takes a very strong legal framework approach. We want to regulate more than to nurture our own competitors, which I believe is the route to go. I don't think law by itself is sufficient to effectively enhance competition. Which brings me to my first point in my policy paper. I have 3 recommendations to targeting the EU, the one towards South Korea. So the first one to the EU would be to undertake a more consumer-centric approach, considering what the consumers want. Do they really want to have that much choice that comes to the expense of the quality of the service? To give you a very brief example, now what the European Commission is expecting is for Google to take out the option of Google Chrome being the by default search engine when you download their browser. They want Google to take out Maps as by the default Maps search engine on their own search engine. So they want to essentially to make the service a lot more fragmented in an attempt to make it look like as if you have more choice or not. So asking the users, do we really want that? I find to be particularly important. And maybe European citizens actually want less choice and more integration when it comes to digital platforms. Specifically. Second, something that I think is really important for the EU to consider is the support for local innovation. Already in certain sectors, for example, energy or sustainability, Europe is really strong at financing ventures or new startups that arise in the arena. I think this is also equally important when it comes to digital platforms. How about instead of trying to regulate the already dominant border or super dominant, as academia calls them, big US companies such as Meta and Google, how about we nurture our own regional player that can compete with them, not necessarily on a global scale, but at least within EU digital markets, in order to enhance competition together with instruments such as the DSA and the DMA. And finally, when it comes to South Korea, I believe something that's really important considering their role in innovation and technological development is to take a more active rather than responsive approach when it comes to such situations now in the digital economy. We have South Korea as a main player on the AI development arena, competing very effectively with Japan and China and the US. So how about they also become equally as active when it comes to regulating big tech giants, including them also in the conversation locally. So this is the presentation of my policy paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalina. Before the forum, I think we spoke about the fact and the challenge of making this topic accessible to a general public that is not necessarily familiar with all the legislative initiatives or the technical terms, but is also a topic that is very much should be at the forefront of everyone's minds because we all have phones, we all are very much connected to the network. So we think that this topic is far-reaching and it's important to have it discussed here. And obviously, I as Kalina's mentor, was especially proud to see the work that she has accomplished throughout the months that we worked together. The highlights for me from the paper are really the cultural differences and the customer preferences that need to be taken into account when you consider legislative practices around the world. And obviously she highlighted the EU and South Korea's differences in that direction, but also what we discovered was really the strong voice that the US used to critique any attempt on behalf of South Korea to adopt legislation that in a way emulates the Digital Markets Act, which once again showcases how strong US influence is on such issues. Now, Anita, you had the privilege of reading through the paper in advance before everyone else actually saw it. So I invited you to act in a way as a discussant to maybe give your quick feedback on what you have seen Kalina present, but also share your own ideas and topics, let's say opinions on the topic. So I give you now the chance to do that.
Thank you. I think it was a real privilege for me to familiarize with the paper of Kalina. I got really interested in how she was analyzing the DMA, its benefits, but also the potential negative effects that it could actually bring to the, to the competition and the digital market overall. What I really picked up from the paper was the fact that she was looking for this, the balance that the EU has to kind of adopt in its regulatory approach because of the risk of over-regulation. And I started thinking from a data privacy perspective, is that really possible to strike such a balance? And if yes, how would that be, implemented in fact? Because to be honest, from a practical perspective, and we've got so many cases that we see how important it is to have regulations which really protect the personal data, which is the GDPR in a way, but also the DMA has its privacy, points in it. So what I'm trying to say is that the DMA works together with the GDPR, also works together with the DSA, the Digital Services Act, and also with the recently adopted AI Act. So they should be looked at together when talking about the regulatory approach of the EU towards the, the digital markets. So. And I think what Kalina mentioned just in her speech was data is our new currency. And this is really a strong statement nowadays because data is really a new currency. And now the question is, should the EU really, it should strike a balance, but when it comes to, for example, personal data more specifically, I think that it might need to be a bit more stringent in its policies, and this is for. I understand that the consumers need to have more choices, but also as a consumer myself, I also feel that there must be protection when it comes to how I browse or use the digital platforms. So. In respect of perhaps many of you are unaware of how, for example, GDPR plays in this digital market context. I'll give you, and I'll probably ask you actually the same question which Kalina asked, but from another perspective, how many times you have opened digital platform? Well, many times, but I'm going to ask you now, how many times you have opened a digital platform which uses cookies, and how many times you are, just accepting these cookies without familiarizing yourself with what data is being processed, where does that data go, for example. To be honest, before starting to specialize in this area of law, I also would just browse and accept all the cookies so that I can use the website. Whereas now I'm literally denying anything, because what I've realized is that nowadays cookies, because they are actually tracking technologies, they use so much of your data when you are browsing on the website, not just data that you've accessed the website, but for example, say that you have profile somewhere, they use the data from, collect the data from your profile, from what you've seen, what you've done in this profile, and this data might go to a place which you don't even exist. I mean, it's really, it's a very important thing to know, because we've had situations where we have found the data of users of a digital platform was stolen, and it was found then on the dark web. So it's a really, really important topic. And from that point of view, I feel that maybe the EU, of course, it should always think of the balance, but maybe from the personal data perspective, it should be a bit more stringent in its political approach. Also now, we know of the AI as well. The artificial intelligence technologies are so a huge wave as well, and the EU is trying to predict what kind of risks could this wave bring, and it's just so unprecedented that even the EU doesn't know how to react to it. So maybe for us it could look like, okay, it's trying to regulate even more, but maybe it's something that we need, although we don't really understand yet, because it's, I mean, as I say, AI is something so huge that no one really understands yet, and no one knows what kind of things will come into place. But when it comes to the DMA itself, I think, yes, perhaps there is risk of that over-regulation with it, but I think it has also a lot of benefits, and specifically when it comes to the customers, I've got some points which I've linked as dons for the business, for the the gatekeepers. And for example, one of the, I guess, most important point here, and connected to the personal data aspect, is the fact that the gatekeepers now cannot track end users outside of the core platform service for the purpose of targeted advertising, which is really, really, I think, important for consumers. Now, in the digital context, and when it comes to the data privacy, it's really important to know that the GDPR is placing certain obligations on controllers of personal data. So the controller in the digital context would be, for example, the data platform owner, or the processor could, if that platform has some form of a processor, for the data processor also has certain obligations. And now, how this affects us as consumers, online consumers and users, so that our personal data is processed, we need to give our consent in most of the times. So basically, the data controller needs to ensure that he has our, the legal basis for processing personal data, which in the context of digital platforms is very often, and most often actually, consent. So even if we don't realize, we are being protected by these regulations when we are browsing online, and we are basically sharing, inadvertently, but sharing personal data. And that's why I think it's really important to have these regulations that protect us from that point of view. The other point I wanted to mention is I think it's also something that Kalina picks up in her paper, which is really is good to know, how the digital package, in a way, of the EU has these two directions. So on one side is the business orientation, on the other side is the consumer orientation. So it's really difficult now for digital platforms to comply with all these different requirements. So on one side, ensure that there is a level playing field for businesses, but on another, to ensure that also consumers are, the obligations in respect of consumers are also applied and complied with. So overall, I think that she's done a great job, and it's something that you should definitely read once it's issued.
Thank you so much, Anita, for agreeing to share your thoughts on this. And in a way, I see this panel as a rite of passage and carrying out from one fellow of the initiative to another. And I'm very, very grateful that we are able to exhibit this, and that our fellows continue to be engaged with the incubator. And we always look forward to their successes and to their professional and career development. And Anita is a perfect example of a successful fellow that we've had. And I wish the same success to Kalina. I have no doubt that she will be able to achieve her goals. But I would also like to remind you that we can use Slido to pose questions, or you could ask for the microphone. We have maybe a couple of minutes just for any immediate questions. Give me a sign if there's someone in the hall who wants to jump in. And also, I will ask the colleagues to once again show the Slido on the screen, just to make sure that we can see for any questions. I'll maybe give a minute or 30 seconds. I don't see anyone from the hall. Let me check on Slido. Maybe not yet. Okay, Kathy, go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you for the
a long press until the on sign shows.
Is it on? Yes. Okay. Thank you for the extensive presentation. I really learned a lot. My question is maybe it's not specifically centered to this the presentation, but something that came up to my mind was when you mentioned like how many times do you look at your phone, etc. Does it matter what the brand of the phone is? Because like nowadays I see that, for example, in Bulgaria there are many users who use Huawei, which is the Chinese brand. But then on the other hand, in Korea, for example, there are a lot of Samsung and iPhone users. And overall, I don't know in the European Union how it is, but I assume there are more there are equally like iPhone users and Samsung users in contrast to, let's say, Huawei or Xiaomi users. So is there like influence of the model of the phone in relation to your topic? Because also like the other context was you mentioned removing, for example, the Google Maps as a customized, like a custom app, or removing Google as a search engine. So because, for example, iPhone, they don't have that.
Well, this is actually really interesting because this is an ongoing situation right now in the European Commission, specifically when it comes to Apple and their business model that is they have their own ecosystem that they want to kind of lock their consumers in, which is something really interesting considering the fact that given the regulations that we currently have, they very directly go against Apple's business model where, okay, what do we do with Safari or what do we do with Keynote? All of these apps that you have by default, once you download the app, we have a few decisions already for how having a monopoly or a dominant company can really affect their behavior on the market. So yes, the brand of the phone does come with certain effects, even under consumer protection law, for example. Just to kind of jump onto something that Anita said about all the times that you've agreed to cookies, these companies, they collect, the profile that they have on consumers usually consists of more than 52,000 different data points, and the brand of the phone is central. For some of them, you having an Apple device or browsing from an Apple device is linked to you being of a higher economic status, meaning that, for example, prices for flights come for a higher price when you're looking at them from an Apple device rather than from a Samsung or a Huawei device. So it's interesting dynamics like that play into this, I would say.
Thank you.
And if I may also jump in on the topic, it's a very, very relevant question that you ask, especially here in Bulgaria, for example, as you mentioned, the split between Apple and Samsung globally. But here in Bulgaria, as far as I know, the market penetration rate of Chinese brands is quite significant, especially in the lower price segments. So this is also a security concern that has been addressed with regard to privacy issues. So in any chance, something that we do not explicitly cover in the paper, but very, very relevant for the topic as well. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. Okay, I don't think I see any other questions on Slido or in the room. So I would like to conclude this panel and thank both Kalina and Anita for participating. And we will just have a very short, maybe 1 minute technical break so that we could switch with the other panelists for the next two discussions. Thank you once again. Dr. Kang, if I may invite you to join us. Okay, so we proceed to the third and final panel of this conference, which is split in two halves. The first topic that we're going to cover is public diplomacy and people-to-people exchanges, where Albena will be presenting her work from the past few months, where she tackles the non-state actors' role in public diplomacy, emphasizing the importance of engaging with the national diaspora. And I'll ask the colleagues to show her presentation on the screen so that we could start. And just while we do that, allow me to also introduce the other two panelists on this discussion here. I have to thank Mr. Valery Radulov from the Executive Agency for Bulgarians Abroad. He's the director of the Directorate for Bulgarian Communities and Information Activities. We specifically invited him here so that we could have this direct link of, our fellow presenting her work, presenting the policy recommendations, and then them being heard and receiving feedback from the relevant national institution responsible for this policy area. And we also wanted to invite a senior representative of the Korean diaspora community here in Bulgaria, so that we could have this dual perspective on the Bulgarian and on the Korean side. And it's a great pleasure for me that we have once again at our forum Dr. James Kang, who is the president of the Association of the Korean Community in Bulgaria. I think we're now ready to begin, Albena, so you have the floor.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Albena Tsacheva, and I am a student of Korean Studies at the Free University of Berlin. My topic today is public diplomacy through non-state actors engaging the diaspora, a comparative study of Bulgaria and South Korea. First of all, I would like to briefly introduce the notion of public diplomacy. Public diplomacy can be seen as a counterpart to traditional diplomacy, where two governments or on official level, two countries are being connected. On the other hand, public diplomacy involves connecting nation A to the foreign publics of nation B. And where it gets interesting is that public diplomacy requires collaboration between governmental and non-governmental entities. During my exchange year at Iowa Women's University, I got passionate about public diplomacy. That's why I decided to write about it as a part of the incubator. And during the discussions, there was the idea of maybe talking about diaspora and its role as a non-state actor. And me being part of the Bulgarian diaspora in Germany, I found it interesting and decided to concentrate on diaspora as a tool for public diplomacy policies. And yes, today I want to talk about this. First of all, I want to briefly introduce with the institutional frameworks of Bulgaria and South Korea when it comes to managing diasporas. Of course, there are laws in both countries. In South Korea, we have the Overseas Koreans Act, and in Bulgaria, we have law on Bulgarians living outside of the Republic of Bulgaria. Of course, there are executive agencies carrying out the law and the respective policies. On the Korean side, we have Overseas Korea's Agency, and on the Bulgarian side, we have Executive Agency for Bulgarians Abroad. And I should say I'm honored that you're here today, because I think that some of my thoughts and recommendations can be useful for your work. In South Korea, we have an interesting online platform which is called 365 Overseas Korean Portal. And it offers services to Koreans abroad, who live abroad, but also to foreign nationals for booking appointments in consulates, for different activities. Also, there is a wide variety of information that this online platform offers, and it's being directed by the Overseas Koreans Cooperation Center. In Bulgaria, we have something similar, or at least my research showed me that we have the EBDS, which is a platform which is only accessible in the EU countries for Bulgarians to book appointments, for issuing documents. However, it's only in Bulgarian, and foreign nationals who might be connected to Bulgaria in some way cannot use it. And for third countries that are not EU countries, one should connect with the embassy or the consulate directly. Now I want to talk about the role of diaspora And first and foremost, diasporas are cultural ambassadors. And Bulgaria and South Korea, I think one common thing that we have is that we're very proud of our cultures and want to show it and present it always in the world. However, diaspora is a major driver of economic growth. First of all, we have remittances that is money sent from diaspora to people here, but on a personal level. And we also have investments. And in my presentation, I will come later to this, but I want to concentrate the fact that diasporas can be major drivers of attracting investments back to Bulgaria. And third that is also very important when it comes to diaspora is the influence on foreign and domestic policy. Diaspora is a direct connection to the foreign publics and the foreign society, and some of them are second or third generation, and of course they impact foreign policies of their host country and also impact domestic politics via elections. As we can see in Bulgaria, it's always a big question: how did Bulgarians abroad vote in the elections? In my case study, I decided to select the US because Bulgaria and South Korea have significant diaspora in the US. And I wanted to look at different diaspora activities in the US. Of course, South Korea has much more resources and, of course, bigger population and bigger diaspora. But I wanted to look specifically if there is a connection, or if their US embassy or the US the Korean embassy and the Korean consulates in US are somehow involved in these diaspora activities. And in each and every example of what I looked, and you can read about it in the paper, I found out that there is always a presence of the Korean consulates or some official, and I found that very important. And I wanted to look if there is something similar in the Bulgarian case, since, especially in the example of the Bulgarian diaspora in the US, it's the second highest remittances that come from there. And I wanted to look if there might be a way to use the diaspora for a provider of investments back to Bulgaria, not just remittances. And I found out about the Bulgarian Midwest Chamber of Commerce, which is actually supported in their activities by the Consulate General of Bulgaria in Chicago. Maybe we all know that the biggest Bulgarian diaspora is located in Chicago, Illinois, and it's a positive example in this regard. Now, coming to my recommendations, I want to enhance. In my paper, you can read more about it, but in the end, I found that it's important to enhance the role of economic attachés. It doesn't mean that it's not being there are efforts. It doesn't mean that there are no efforts. It means that economic attachés should support more diaspora activities abroad, not just in the US, where is a big Bulgarian diaspora, but also maybe somewhere in South America and Asia, and show their presence more actively. The second, in order to bring more investments, because economic attachés can make the floor and give more ideas how to connect local businesses and diaspora businesses to Bulgarian ones. And the second recommendation, I directed it at both Bulgaria and South Korea, is to, in general, engage actively more non-state actors for their strategies, for managing diaspora communities and public diplomacy communities, because it's important to have officials representing Bulgaria or South Korea. However, we have talked before, it's the people-people exchange that really helps building relations and connections. And last but not least, this can be maybe an idea for you at the executive agency, is to learn more from the Korean experience regarding digital presence, or how digital platforms regarding diaspora management work, and maybe try to build one that is for all Bulgarians abroad and not just for ones that are in the EU. And yes, that concludes my presentation. Here's some sources. All the sources are in my policy paper, and I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albena. I just use the chance to highlight some of your policy recommendations, because some of them were addressed towards the economic attachés and them playing a more proactive role in engaging with the diaspora and encouraging the national diasporas to also become investors and to really facilitate the business exchanges between their country of origin and their country of residence. Just to mention that we are in contact with at least the economic attaché in Seoul, Mr. Ilya Dekov, who I'm sure some of you know. Unfortunately, he was not able to join us for the forum today, but we are in the process of organizing a separate event maybe with him where we could once again bring this to his attention and hear from his side as well, and hopefully this will also facilitate the exchange and let's say progressing that idea to the right kind of people. And obviously we'll also address it to the Ministry of Economy of Industry who are responsible for that. Now I would like to turn to Mr. Radov, because of course some of the recommendations also addressed your work. We're interested to hear what the agency is currently doing, what kind of maybe challenges you face along the way, any ideas, what we could expect from your work in the future. And of course, any feedback would be welcomed on what Albena just presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, thank you very much for your invitation. It's a very interesting forum for us. Thank you, Albena, for your presentation. It's very interesting and a kind of new for us as a in a Korean perspective, because honestly we haven't had any chances to contact our tiny diaspora in South Korea so far, and in this regards it was interesting for us. Just a few words about the agency. The Executive Agency for Bulgarians Abroad is a former state agency for Bulgarians abroad. Is now a executive agency at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So in this, this happened 2 years ago when we were transformed. And now we are a tiny agency in the governmental body that is trying to, how to put it mildly, to provide some policies to the government that is actual and well, let's say it in real time by relations with our diaspora. But let me just mention that our main efforts are in Europe and Northern America, both Canada and the United States. And by the way, Chicago is not the largest diaspora anymore. We've got, let's say, 500,000 Bulgarians only in Germany, and another 500,000 in the United Kingdom. So, sorry, Chicago, Illinois. And also, I would like to mention the, as we call it, historic diaspora in Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Serbia, Northern Macedonia, part of Albania and Kosovo. So our, well, let's say, humble efforts are mainly there in these countries and then this region. Well, after accepting Bulgaria in the European Union, you know, there's been a lot of migration processes in this respect. So, to our, you know, information, about 1.5 million people just left the country. They are migrating, they are, you know, coming back and forth, but they are not in Bulgaria, and this is, well, let's call a spade a spade. It's a great loss to the country. And I mean, in labor perspective, you know, it's mainly, let's say 40 plus, but mainly young people that left the country. So we can feel it right now in the country. This lack of labor force, lack of let's say people in fertility age. So actually, it's a matter of a domestic policy to hold the people in the country, and when they are outside, when they are abroad, I'm not sure it's gonna work. Like, please come back, and we will make sure you feel better at home. But well, so yeah, thank you very much again for your recommendations. And yeah, I would like to. Actually, I've come here not to mentor or to teach, but to learn new things from you know, young researchers, yourself and Kalina and sorry, I forgot the first and Kathy. Yeah. So thank you very much for your presentations too. It was very interesting personally for me, especially Kalina's you know, warnings about the digital securities. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodov. I think Abeda wanted to say something.
Yes, I want to just want to say that during my research, I carefully studied the website of the executive agency, and the job that you're doing is actually pretty impressive, since you're reaching out to very many organizations throughout the world. They're mostly cultural and educational.
Mainly, yes.
Exactly. And my point here is to bring more attention to the economic side, maybe how you can, or can be a mediator, and together with the economic attachés. And of course, it's very sad that many Bulgarians leave and have left, myself including.
Yep.
However, I think that we from abroad can also be very helpful for
Absolutely.
Bulgaria. And that's where your role can be, it is most important, I would say. And yes, I hope really that there is some food for thought for you. And yes, I hope that also when we overcome this political crisis, there will be more attention and emphasis on policies regarding Bulgarian diaspora.
Thank you, Abba. Thank you.
Thank you both. To finish on a more positive note, because obviously the issue of demographic crisis, brain drain in Bulgaria, these are all topics that we also at EPI have tackled many times. We've also discussed, because we're part of the Bulgarian Platform for International Development, we've also discussed how development cooperation policy maybe could be a way to reach out and also to fund some of the activities related to Bulgarian diasporas, especially in those historical diasporas in the Balkans and in the Eastern Partnership, Eastern European countries. But yes, when it comes to the more global aspect of it, for sure, there is no comparison in terms of the resources that Bulgaria has and your institution has and what, let's say, a country like South Korea could afford to do. But the idea why we actually presented the paper was just to see if there are any, let's say, policy instruments or innovations that do not necessarily cost a lot of money, but are more about having the right people in the right places or making the right contacts, the right organizational structure. And this is what we hope maybe to contribute towards the debate. Other than that, it's obviously a huge issue. And just to mention on the Bulgarian diaspora in South Korea, it is a very small one, of course, but it's actually a very, let's say, close-knit community. And I think the Bulgarian embassy there is doing a pretty good job at communicating with that diaspora. And we, as you see, our initiative, the Next Generation Career Fellows Incubator, actually throughout its 5th iterations, we've always had fellows who were either in Korea or just recently returned from Korea while doing their work in the program. We've also, you see that 2 of our fellows this year are actually studying and living abroad at the moment, but we try to engage them so that they stay connected to Bulgaria and they continue to contribute to our country in their professional or academic or personal capacity. And maybe Bulgaria also needs much more of those initiatives where through various public and also private NGO and academic corporations, we could keep the Bulgarian diaspora still engaged and very much linked to our country and contributing also to its economic development. And now we have just a few more minutes on this topic, and I wanted to turn to Dr. James Kang, who could also present us maybe the perspective of the Korean diaspora here in Bulgaria. He's also, I believe, quite well positioned within the network of, let's say, Korean diasporas abroad. And you could, I'm hoping you could give us that idea of what is going on in terms of the relationship between Korean institutions and Korean diasporas abroad, and maybe if you, as someone living in Bulgaria for quite a long time and quite engaged also here in the Bulgarian society, could also maybe give some ideas of what Bulgaria could do better and maybe learn from the Korean experience, or let's say a caution of what not to do based on the Korean experience. So basically we rely on your ideas. You have the floor.
Hello. I thank you for your invitation to this press to hear your experience and also to share my opinion about how to develop the society of Korean diaspora and also a Bulgarian diaspora also. So I would like to appreciate the paper of Albena Chacheva for her study about Bulgarian diaspora and Korean diaspora. But thank you, first of all. And after hearing from Mr. Valery Radulov and also from Albena Chacheva, I understood that the important as an instrument for development of diaspora is government track. So as you said already, executive agents under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also through this ministry. So and it means through their embassies in worldwide. So of course this is the base instrument for helping the residents in Bulgarians in abroad and also Korean in worldwide. So I can share my site about this is my site also. There are 4 tracks to support the life of Korean diaspora and also for development of their life in foreign countries. So nowadays, Korean diaspora are about 7.3 millions in 180 countries. So there are many Korean diaspora in the world. So Korean diaspora, the history of Korean diaspora began in the mid of 19th centuries, and also of course after 1997, after financial crisis, also many Korean people went abroad to live there. So Korean society are very active in everywhere. So of course, as you said, that in Korea also, first of all, in 1994, Korean established one Korean foundation. So and then 2022, 2 years ago, this foundation was restructured as your executive agency under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So because the many Korean residents in the world, they registered to have more strong agency for promoting, for helping Korean diaspora. So I can share one information about how in business sector, how business will enhance the development of Korean diaspora. So in 1982, there was established one non-government but cooperative and other track is cooperative track. This is that I can say World Federation of Overseas Korean Traders Associations. This is called World OCTA. So nowadays there are 74 countries, and there are World OCTA Korean members. So 13,000 members are in this federation. In 149 cities, there are World OCTA office. Of course, in Bulgaria, we have also a World OCTA office in here. So not only government circle or the government track, but also in corporate track, they cooperate together. And also NGO sector is very important. You know how many Korean NGO organization they willing to support Korean people in other countries. Competitive is very strong. So nowadays they would like to invest in next generation. I can say one Korean Community Foundation established in 2002. Since 2003, they annually invited second, third, and fourth generation overseas Koreans to Korea to help them experience their homeland and develop as future global leaders. It is very important point. And also, I think that after these basis instrument for developing of Korean diaspora, there are Korean community organizations. So over 500 associations nowadays they have in 180 countries there are more than 500 associations, Korean associations. They support the settlement, the quality of life, and the business and cultural life and identity preservation of Korean diaspora. And also not only one, for example, I am a president of Korean Association in Bulgaria, and also I am member of, also I am board member of European Association, and also I am part of World Assembly of Korean Association. So 2 years ago, was established this kind of World Assembly of Korean Association. So this kind of organization very easily make network. So network is very important point for Korean diaspora for their development their lives. So, and also I can say about Korean churches. It is very important. They have a very significant role in Korean society in the world. So Korea is the second largest missionary sending countries after U.S. So there are many. So wherever there is a Korean community, there is there is a Korean church. So these churches actively support the diaspora with a strong spirit of service. I want put accent on the next generation. So of course, the economic success is essential for the development of one society and of course one country. But focus on the next generation is very important. So many Korean NGOs and government and companies, they understood very well that our future is in next generation. Supporting the next generation to grow as leaders ensures not only the future prosperity of the diaspora, but also significant contribution to their local countries. So next generation for Korean people, they are next generation is a treasure. Supporting their potential is key to advancing the diaspora and achieving long-term success. Programs for the next generation, including education, culture, business, and so on. Initiative from our governments and private companies, universities, research institutions, and cultural organizations play a vital role in achieving this goal. In Bulgaria, I'm sorry, only 1 minute I will continue to say. In Bulgaria, the Korean community began in 1990 with just over 20 people who came after diplomatic ties were established. Today, the Korean community has grown to around 300 members, of more than 10 times. Yeah, we have a Korean association also here, Korean school, business associations, Korean churches, missionary association, and culture groups. Among these, of course, the Korean association plays the central role, working closely with the Korean embassy to support the development of local Korean community. Finally, I hope the Korean community in Bulgaria continues to grow and contribute positively to Bulgarian society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kang. I think it was very inspirational in a way to see how the Korean diaspora communities around the world engage with one another. I think the point of forming those associations, and maybe a question from my side would be how much support those associations get directly from the Korean state, and how much of their work is based purely on the so important people-to-people exchanges and the personal drive of the individuals being there, because as we mentioned when comparing the Bulgarian and the Korean example, sometimes the resources of the Bulgarian state of course significantly smaller, but maybe if you could give us an idea whether the Korean state, the Korean government plays a vital role in establishing those associations, or whether they have been a result of a more proactive, let's say, homegrown demand from the actual communities around the world.
There are various programs for inviting a young generation, also Korean Korean diaspora, from government track and also NGOs track and also corporate track. So I cannot say so many instruments and the programs, but the most important program for Korean diaspora is to invite next generation and also Korean politics in worldwide. So, and also businessmen. So Korean government together with Korean business company, they together work to invite So they can see they can have also in Korea their business, on their own business, and also in other countries also. So through the Korean embassy and through the executive agents under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they provide various programs. So Korean communities, they can join. They can ask. For example, we want organize Korean cultural days, and also we want to invite lecturers for young generation forum. So there are nowadays there are many young generation forum. So for example, in Bulgaria also we organized four times for young generation forum. So financially, Korean government through these executive agents they support, and also Korean companies here, Samsung, especially they support. So when business is successful, diaspora will be successful. Of course, education is very important for them. So various scholarship they provide to Korean young generation, many kinds of scholarship to study in Korea. So Korea nowadays is becoming one of international education centers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kang. I also see you highlighted the role of the business. So next time we organize a discussion around human capital in Bulgaria and engaging the diaspora in the labor market, contributing to the economy, of course, we will have to include the business representatives as well. Just a quick look to see if there are any questions from the room. I see on Slido there was a question, because I refer to the Bulgarian diaspora in Korea as being a very small one, and I was asked to give an estimate. To be fair, I don't have the exact statistic as of today. I remember at least before the pandemic it was around 200 people, I believe. If anybody else has more recent data, I personally do not. But probably around that number?
Could be more.
Could be more nowadays.
Many students now that go for a whole degree to South Korea, Bulgarian students, so it could be a little bit more. But yeah, there is not much. That's also what I found out in my research, because on the Korean side there's an exact number, how many Koreans there abroad. Of course, for Bulgaria it's a little bit harder because of the free movement in the EU. But I couldn't really find numbers, and that's why we don't know also about Korea exactly. Yes.
I see Mr. Gorbinov, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to ask you about two things. Bulgaria actually is waiting in the next couple of days to have a confirmation to enter Schengen area entirely. And this would make Bulgaria a more attractive place, for sure, not only for the Bulgarians that live abroad, but also for Koreans to be more here and to stay more of them here. And the second thing is that Bulgaria is on the way to join Eurozone, which could happen next year, mid of next year, or let's say latest at the beginning of 2026. So in these two steps, most probably, they will influence somehow most of the Bulgarian diaspora that lives abroad to think about coming back or moving back to Bulgaria. And we would expect more foreigners to come and more foreign investors as well to settle and to contribute to the prosperity of the Bulgarian economy. What do you think?
I for sure think that the Schengen area and the Euro are huge benefits for Bulgaria, and although the Schengen happened fairly late, in my opinion, and that we are still waiting for the euro. I believe that these two aspects will really maybe come or give food for thought to many Bulgarians, at least in the European Union, to come back home. And this is a personal comment, but I hear it more and more often from my friends and acquaintances that live abroad that they plan to come to Bulgaria. And we can see that there are many other factors, political factors around Europe and the whole geopolitical situation. And to be honest, me personally, I'm also waiting for the euro to enter Bulgaria finally, and that we be really, really a member, a real member with all the assets of the European Union. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I think we will have to wrap up this discussion here. Thank you once again to all three of our panelists. And I'm well aware that we are a little bit behind schedule, but we've, in a way, reserved for the end one of the most interesting topics. Maybe you're aware, and it was mentioned in the morning session, that a major breakthrough in Bulgarian-Korean bilateral cooperation has been in the field of energy cooperation, specifically nuclear energy, because both countries have this unique perspective of being firm supporters of nuclear energy and see it as a strategic resource. So we wanted to honor that, the fact that the Hyundai ENC will be participating in the construction of the 7th and the 8th unit of the Kozloduy nuclear power plant. So we will wrap up the forum with a discussion on that topic. I have here with me Denis Pavlov, who those of you who have participated in previous editions of the forum probably know quite well, because he was one of our Next Generation Korea Fellows back in 2021 when he was still studying in Busan in South Korea. And he has continuously worked on topics related to energy. His first topic was on offshore wind energy. Then we slightly deviated. We talked about country branding, which I think also ties nicely with the topic that we just had. And now he's here to talk about this, let's say, new page in Bulgarian-Korean energy cooperation in terms of nuclear. And to complement that discussion, we've invited also an energy policy expert, Dr. Petko Truchchev, who is actually a lecturer in energy policy at the University of National and World Economy, recently completed his master thesis, his PhD dissertation in defense, and also someone who I trust to give us the objective, expert-driven analysis of how much this project matters for Bulgaria in terms of our own energy security, energy diversification, in terms of our decarbonization process. So this is what we have on the agenda until the end. I hope you are able to endure and to stay with us, and I promise you will have a nice lunch afterwards and continue the networking aspect. But without further ado, I'll ask the colleagues to just load the presentation of Denis on the slides so that I could officially give him the floor for a short intervention. And gentlemen, I'm sorry, I have to ask you to be quite concise in your interventions in order to finish more or less on time without a significant delay. Are we ready? Yeah, we can go ahead. Can we just show the presentation here as well, so that? Yeah. Okay.
So, hello everyone, online and offline. I'm happy to see you all and sticking to the end to listen to this interesting topic that I'm going to discuss and share with you. So, as Mariana said, we witnessed a really big breakpoint between South Korea and Bulgaria, especially in the energy field, with the assignment of the construction of the two nuclear reactors. And in this discussion that I'm gonna present is what are the potential and the benefits, and how the two countries can collaborate for technological progress and energy security. So why I'm showing these two graphs in the beginning in the introduction, in asking the question how Bulgaria and South Korea can collaborate, first we have to see how the two countries stand within its energy production. On the left side, we can see that South Korea have a significant big percentage of production of nuclear energy, and with the success of Yoon Suk-yeol and his ambitions to even expand, we can see that South Korea is quickly becoming energy innovator in the nuclear. But on the other side, we can still see that Bulgaria is lacking and having a big proportion of coal, 45%. And nuclear is still in the second place, where we have still big place to develop. So we can ask, like, why Bulgaria should focus on nuclear when, like in Germany, one of the biggest EU leaders are closing their nuclear power plants and switching to solar or wind. Well, one more graph interesting. I know that people like looking at graphs. We can see that if it's well shown that nuclear, by percentage of terawatts of hour, generates, it has 0.03 deaths per generation. And by comparison with the coal, it's way bigger number. To give you a perspective, Sofia is consuming 4 to 6 terawatts of power. So multiply 32 people by 6, and you can see the big comparison between the safety of nuclear versus coal. I know many people are afraid of nuclear power plant by the Fukushima that happened recently, not so far ago, and back in times where I still hasn't been born, the Chernobyl. But with the development of technology and many more improvements and the urgent need for green energy, I think Bulgaria should focus and make nuclear one of its priorities. Also, we saw with the energy supply crisis after the invasion in Ukraine, this was a big shift and shake in the European countries to think about their independency and reliance on other parties. So nuclear energy can be reliable, low carbon, and long-term a profitable option. We know that it has a lot of big investments in the beginning of the construction, and it takes almost like 10 years. It is expected the new 2 reactors to start operating after 10 to 11 years. And at this time, it's like a money-grabbing project, but research, and many research shows that in long term, as nuclear power is a long-term project, it's actually more profitable than losing. And with the goal of the Bulgarian government to phase out coal by 38 and 40, I think this priority should be focused and we should put more attention. I try to make a quick maths and try to think how this can change in the implementation of those 2 nuclear reactors to the existing ones in Kozloduy and PP. We see that once the 2 things are completed, the 2 reactors, we can see almost like 10%, 100% more generation, and shares of energy supply to double. And if, let's say, we're optimistic about that and things go well, and Hyundai Construction and Engineering and maybe Westinghouse see opportunity and the Bulgarian government is open to expand, we can see if they make a shift for a new nuclear power plant, those numbers will skyrocket, and nuclear shares of total energy can take like 78% in the end to 2050. But the question for us, for Bulgarians, is like, why especially South Korea when we have so much big nuclear participants and experts, like let's say in France, where France has a big proportion of nuclear energy production. Well, let me show you. First, South Korea leadership. The Barakah project in United Arab Emirates was the first project of the South Korea nuclear and hydro energy cooperation. It is the first actually nuclear part in the Arab Emirates which use third generation nuclear power plants, which are way more safer than the old ones that were built back ago. Also, expertise in research and development and workforce training for research projects. South Korea, in the end of the century, started investing more and more in developing experts and conducting researches in this field. And with the new, as I saw it in the Korean newspapers, K nuclear energy renaissance stated when I was looking how the Korean media was reporting this crucial event for us. The country is focusing more and more in exporting that kind of expertise and success abroad. So what kind of opportunities there could be besides the development of the two nuclear reactors? I see it as an investing opportunities. Bulgaria can open for more Korean investments and projects in the other sectors. Besides energy, we see the opening of the Office of Hyundai Construction Engineering here. More experts will be needed. More people that have studied in Korea that came back can contribute to such things. This will reflect also in the Korean society and showing Bulgaria as an interesting place and reliable place for more investments. Economic benefit, as I said, like job creation in construction operation. And Bulgaria, as it's currently is one of the big exporters of energy in the Balkan Peninsula, it can expand this presence. Policy exchange, like training Bulgarian engineers, we can see it exchange between the countries. As we're discussing later with the military things, I see it in the energy sector as well. There could be programs, know-how to be learned, and many more opportunities for collaboration. Not even nuclear, we can see it in other sectors as well. And one of the biggest, like energy security, like those two new reactors will reduce Bulgaria's reliance on imported energy and firm its grounds on stability. As I show you like examples, if this project becomes successful, we can see the shift to restart old ideas or reshape them, like the Belene NPP. Korean technology can be used instead of old reactors and old technology, like for example those built in UAE. The Kozloduy NPP can lay the ground for the further introduction of South Korean nuclear technology and energy investments. We also have nuclear treatment, which is important, and reusing. And as I said, it will strengthen not economic but also diplomatic collaboration and make Bulgaria to not rely on one-man dependency on certain things, but expand its, let's say, allies and friends outside of Europe as well. For Korea, we know Korea is one of the big exporters, and currently, as the graph shows, especially in Europe, during the years their export is growing. This could be a new field for Korea to export, to get economic benefit, also to get more upper leverage when collaborating and making deals with Europe. And this will solidify its position as a global leader in energy innovation and transition. It will be even more bigger thing to focus on in the future when we have those goals 2050. So my recommendation, I can say, like strengthen bilateral agreement, establish joint R&D, secure funding models to ensure project continuity, and most importantly, like we should also address public concerns, because many people, as I said, they are scared of nuclear. But as I show you, we shouldn't be, and we should embrace innovation in order to progress further. Challenges and risks, regulatory compliance with EU. Korea is still very early in solidifying its grounds in the EU and developing such projects. As we know, EU have really strong and concrete regulation that other companies and entities should follow. Public perception, as I said, financial challenges for such large scale projects and long-term investments. It should be feasible and it should finish and not be left in the middle. And most importantly, currently the Bulgarian political instability, which can signal more like yellow-reddish flag. It's not the perfect time for investments. And for conclusion, I can say this partnership is a model for international energy collaboration. It addresses both nation goals, efficiency, energy independence, economic growth, sustainability, and a shared vision for a clear, resilient energy future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denis. If I could, if you allow me to wrap up, I guess the key point is that this collaboration is important for Bulgaria because of the opportunity to diversify its sources, both in terms of nuclear energy technology, but also to consider know-how transfer, the fact that Hyundai ENC will be in fact has already opened an office here and is actively recruiting people, also allows for Bulgarian experts to gain an insight of how the Koreans operate on that front. Maybe, again, there is a transfer of know-how and technological ideas. And for Korea, this is expanding its global portfolio, its status as a nuclear energy technology provider, and being able to sustain a project such as this. And now we turn to Dr. Trukhchev for a more, let's say, general look on how this project fits into the bigger picture of Bulgarian energy system. I will ask the colleagues to switch to the slides of Dr. Trukhchev. We've agreed with him that he feels a bit more comfortable speaking in Bulgarian, but his slides will be in English so that our foreign guests here could also keep up with the presentation. And if there is a need, of course, I will be here to act as an interpreter should there be a need for that.
Okay, thank you for the invitation to talking about this sensitive and very important topic. And I would achieve at the end of Mariana tells that the nuclear energy, the most important for me and for the European Union, that the nuclear will help us to achieve the European green goals. By 2015. Okay, I see that we are over time. That's why I'll read my paper. I had intention to talk in Bulgarian, but I don't want to waste the time with the translation. I'll try. I hate to read, but I'll try to read it enough artistic, and you're not gonna die from boring. Nuclear energy is undoubtedly among the lower emission energy sources, like you know. I think there is no doubt. And there is a consensus at this time. To achieve decarbonization targets, nuclear sources need to be deployed in the energy system alongside with the renewables. The both can complement each other. But while the renewables are not yet able to guarantee security of supply and stability of the electricity system, they are technologically unable to be baseload energy, that's what I mean. But the nuclear energy is able to cover these vacuums. Leaving aside the slower and more expensive construction of nuclear power plants compared to the other energy projects, the bigger challenge is how to combine the generation capacity with that of the renewables in the energy mix. Green sources are easier to manage because of their intermittent production, while the production cycle of nuclear plants must be constant, and it's difficult to maneuver because of safe operation. It's a technical problem. Digital power systems are a good solution to maneuver the power system, but in the mix between nuclear and green power, they can be easier to apply in managing renewables because of their intermittent production and their peak at different times of the day. Whereas with nuclear plants, it would be more difficult to implement them, as there is no way to have a peak and easily maneuver production capacity depending on consumption schedules. So this drawback can be solved with better management of commercial schedules. You know, the electricity production is борсово търгове, как се каже? We trade the electricity on stock markets, and my point is the production and commercial schedules in the power system should overlap as much as possible, so that the power operators do not have to manage imbalance. This would also be better for the generators, and it would save them costs, which in some cases are not small at all. For example, the situation in April and May in Bulgaria on the exchange here, when we had problems with the imbalance of the system, and this led to difficulties with the maneuvering of capacities for the electricity operator and to higher cost for the rest producers. Proper management of commercial schedules and combination of renewables energy nuclear power plants would also help to manage the electricity mix technologically, so that the two types of energy sources are not competitors but help each other. This is conditioned, first of all, by the implementation of decarbonization targets, especially in the EU, due to the European Green Deal, and second, in terms of lower cost for producers and price stability for consumers. Both sources, green and nuclear, have the lowest cost per unit megawatt of production. The problem will be new nuclear capacity, whose capital costs are significantly higher than renewables. Therefore, to ensure their payback without burdening consumers, is it better to combine the market segments where the two energy sources trade? It is better for nuclear power plants to trade their output on long-term markets. For this, first of all, there is guarantee of output realization, and second, provides a steady income. This help in long-term returns, as long-term returns of the order of 20 years are not always a solution for investors. Is it appropriate for such projects to be built of public-private partnership, especially as nuclear power, as was recognized as green by the European Commission a year and a half ago, and which means that the projects for new nuclear capacity receive funding under European programs as a priority, as well as easier access to bank finance. However, there must be state guarantee for this. The risk here would not be great in view of the forecast increase in electricity consumption. Moreover, the electrification of transport, the production of green hydrogen, which as byproducts also requires a certain amount of electricity, is being bet on. Also, with the removal of coal-fired power plants from the energy mix in the next decade, a vacuum will emerge for generation capacity to guarantee the stability of the electricity system. And one example from Bulgaria, a week ago, here we witnessed increased electricity consumption due to the cold weather and unfavorable climate for renewable energy producers, and resurgence of production from coal-fired power plants. On this screen, yes, you can see why has it comes to do this of the two nuclear units at Kozloduy. One was undergoing at annual plant maintenance. Production from it covers on average 1/5 part of the consumption. As a result, there was a serious mismatch between supply and demand for electricity on the exchange market. Prices have risen due to the inclusion of thermal power plants, whose production cost is the highest in the mix, but in order to participate in the energy mix, their marginal costs are covered, affecting the exchange prices. If we look at what the mix was in those 3 days, we see that the capacity of Kozloduy Unit 6, which is out for plant annual maintenance, is almost equal to the coal-fired Maritsa East 2 plant. So if we had a working nuclear unit, this situation could have been avoided. The need for new nuclear capacity for Bulgaria will be more pronounced after the end of the next decade, when the service life of the Unit 5 at Kozloduy expires, and shortly after Unit 6. What is most often pointed out as a disadvantage of nuclear power plants is that they fail to participate fully in the regulation of the electricity system, but that's a technological point of view, as they fail to engage the tertiary regulation from an operational safety point of view, unlike the coal and gas-fired power plants. And in conclusion, the format COP28 last year in Abu Dhabi and COP in Qatar and COP29 this year in Baku declaration. There is a declaration from the leaders to triple nuclear capacity by 2050 because of expected increased electricity consumption due to the decarbonization. And it only shows that new nuclear power plants projects will have an assured market in the future. The only more serious risk to their construction is geopolitical because of the uneven distribution of uranium resources, and this could be a precondition for a repeat of the gas crisis in Europe 2 years ago. That is why before nuclear power plants are built, it is a good idea to secure long-term uranium supplies with contracts and from stable geopolitical partners where there is no production of their own. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer you during the break or now.
Thank you, Dr. Trukchev. I believe the Nuclear Energy Cooperation is a huge topic that we could dedicate a whole conference on. And in fact, I know that earlier this month, the Embassy of the Republic of Korea organized something like this. So given the time pressure that we are under, I'm not willing to really open the discussion at the moment, but instead I would like to invite everyone here in the venue to join us for lunch, and maybe there we can continue this discussion on energy cooperation and specifically nuclear. And because I also don't see any questions coming in from the online viewers, so I will have to say this is the end of this panel, and really would like to thank everyone for contributing to the event. From our side as organizers, it's important to note that we will be releasing eventually the video recordings of these sessions. Also, if you want to get, let's say, the presentations of our Next Generation Korea Fellows, please reach out to me and I can send it to you. And of course, we will be publishing a proceedings report with summarized versions of everything that has been presented here. Our project with Korea Foundation is not over. In early 2025, basically the first quarter of the year, we will be releasing in print and also online all the policy papers that you have witnessed presenting today, a few discussion papers, including Denis' paper on the nuclear cooperation issue. So stay tuned for that. We're not done with this project. We still have some surprises for you in the following months, and we very much hope that we'll have the opportunity to meet again and to continue to work together towards advancing both bilateral Bulgaria-Korea relations, because let's not forget that next year we have a new anniversary to look forward to. We started the project back in 2020 with the 30th anniversary, and we'll wrap it up in 2025 when we have the 25th anniversary of bilateral diplomatic ties. Once again, I would like to, on behalf of the Economic Policy Institute, I would like to thank everyone for staying till the end and contributing to the success of the event, to everyone who presented and discussed here, to the technical team who helped us facilitate the hybrid event, and of course to all my colleagues, to Milena, to everyone who made this project possible. Without the support of the Korea Foundation and of course the Embassy of the Republic of Korea, we would not have had the chance to be doing this for the past 5 years. Once again, thank you. You're welcome to join us for lunch, where we could continue our informal discussions. Have a great day.